Let's bring this, ladies, bring this meeting of the select board to order. Becky,
Hello. You could highlight mine.
Becky, you're present on Zoom.
Yes, I'm here.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
John.
I'm here, yes.
And I'm here as well. We will now take public comments on non-agenda items. We have a fairly busy meeting, so I'm going to restrict comments to 2 minutes. Is there anyone who has comments on anything that's not on the agenda? Is there anyone online?
Not seeing anyone now.
Okay. The first thing that we ordinarily do is look at we have a chairman's report. I have no chairman's report. We look at the action items we have coming up. And is there anyone on the board who has an item to add to the action items? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to open a public hearing for the National Grid work on Arbella Street?
I move that the select board open a public hearing on the petition of National Grid to install approximately 5 feet of underground conduit from MH3 to customer on Arbella Street.
Second.
Becky?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John, yes.
Okay. Recognize.
Peter Mahabir Sheehy, representing National Grid,
Thank you.
44 River Street, Beverly, Massachusetts. This is to facilitate the customer's upgraded service. The existing conduit that's there is too small.
We have comments from Charles Dam that he wants 48 hours prior to mobilizing the work, notify the abutters, maintain traffic and police details, and that the area be returned to the condition it was before you began.
Okay.
Does anyone on the board have comments or questions?
I just have a question as to how does this get prioritized in relation to other requests that the town has in front of National Grid? A couple of weeks ago, we learned about other work that we need National Grid to do, and I'm just curious as to how,
Specifically, the
Black Earth,
transformer at Black Earth.
yeah, how does this get prioritized? And how long has this been waiting for work?
Black Earth, that would be a supply chain, whether or not we have the transformer or not.
Do we know if it's on the list to be done?
It's on the list. We're just waiting. We're at the mercy of whatever comes in, when it comes in.
We don't
If
have
I
an ETA.
may,
Yes, Becky?
if I may, Ann,
Yes.
my understanding is that the transformer is in now.
Okay.
We have Andrew from Black Earth on with us at this meeting. If we need any clarification on anything.
Thank you.
And I would agree, we don't want to penalize a customer who wants service updated, but I also think that we need to ensure that the town's needs are met as well. Thank you.
Who filed first?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how they prioritize what work gets done. The town has a number of things we want done, including this request. How does this request get in front of us before the other?
First come, first served.
Answer that.
But there's some question about where the transformer is.
Yeah, we need that
I
done.
won't know that standing here. I'd have to go back and look.
Would you, do you interface with the town on all of the National Grid? In other words, you're the interface for Black Earth as well as for this particular project?
Yes.
Can you get back to us within 24 hours in terms of where things are? 48,
48 would be good.
okay.
Thank you.
And if I may,
Certainly.
there were also some other stipulations Chuck had on there regarding the sidewalk, which is a new
Mhm.
one the town had installed, as well as a replacement of an underground connection to the street light at the intersection of Rosedale and Arbella. Additionally, loam and seed to match in the disturbed
Mhm.
areas. Does National Grid have that list of information from DPW?
I do not know. Who was it sent to?
I usually pass, I can say, I could usually pass that along to my contact at National Grid once you guys approve the
So
petition.
we would add that to the work that we're permitting.
It gets right.
Yeah, there was
it's-
one, Chuck said there was an additional section they wanted done because it was right in the same place.
Mhm.
And we want it all done at the same time.
Even though it wasn't first come, first served.
Right, because it makes sense.
Would there be a problem with replacing an underground, a buried cable to a streetlight?
That would depend on whether or not we own the streetlights. Do we own the streetlights in Manchester?
Generally, no.
You don't own the street light, but you own the conduit and the wire to it.
There was no point of demarcation, like a handhole?
No, it goes right to the base of the light.
Okay.
So it's, again, it's right, you're digging up you're going right by it as you dig this extension, so it would make sense to make sure that that wire is upgraded, functioning.
We're going from the manhole right in front of his property to him. We're not going anywhere else.
If I may, Ann,
Yes, Becky?
It indicated,
the map actually shows that you're going from manhole 3 over to 3 Arbella, which is not directly in front of it.
It's in front of that manhole.
so the
It's
plan,
right in front of his double window.
the map that you submitted shows manhole 3 further down the street and manhole 5 directly in front of this house. So I don't know if that was a nomenclature error or if it's longer.
Probably is, because when I was out there, the manhole is right in front of his house.
Okay, if I may, Ann,
Yes.
looking at the map, I can see now that what appears to be looked like number 3 Arbella, I believe is number 5. Manhole 3, yes, it's in
Okay.
front of number 3, but it's not listed on the map submitted to us as 3 Arbella. It's just submitted as Arbella Street.
Mhm.
But the conduit we're asking about is across the street from that.
You'd have to include all of that in what you submit back to us.
So we could do approval subject to National Grid's agreement of all the conditions.
And we can give you the specific, the conditions are in an email from Charles Dana, DPW director. They include, as Becky said, the entire limits of the new sidewalk. No, you're not, it's unfair to expect you to remember all of this. Can someone If we have a motion to include all of the requirements from the DPW director, can someone else fill in the? Okay. Someone had, Mr. Jeffrey, sorry, I can't. McAvoy, I can't.
Yes,
Yes. Please, go ahead.
yes, this is Jeffrey McAvoy, 7 Arbella Street. I just had some questions. We have a request in with National Grid going back to early October of last year, late September, for a service upgrade where they were going to run some new cable through an existing conduit to our house. I was wondering if that might be part of this project. There was no digging required, but from my understanding, it was just running cable through an existing conduit.
It is an associated project.
Would that be done at the same time?
It would have to be done before,
Okay,
but I need this to go through for us to
Yeah.
continue.
So is
I
the,
just had one other comment for the select board. Someone who's been waiting since October, late September, early October for this. I don't really care for the fact that you're trying to add additional stipulations and additional work and making this contingent on anything for the town. I've been waiting since October. I've already lost out on rebates from National Grid because this wasn't completed last year when I requested it. So I really don't like the fact that you're trying to add, new lines to lamp posts or whatever the hell else to this project as a contingency.
thank you.
My understanding
You're
is
welcome.
these are two separate applications, though, correct?
These are two separate, and
No, we have to upgrade the infrastructure to him and simultaneously do this.
Okay, but before us is this application.
But yes, because the other one does not need an application. The other one just needed the conduits to be pulled in, but we have to coordinate the swap over with the secondaries, which feed the neighborhood to do this.
Seems like there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this particular stretch of Arbella. I personally would like a little more clarity. I don't,
The existing secondary that is there will not handle the upgraded service for he or the new customer, or the customer at number 3. So we have to upgrade the secondary.
okay.
That is fed from another location. This is just secondary. There is no primary down the street. So we had to upgrade transformers and swap over loads in
So-
order to do this.
So my question, Madam Chair, is if we approve this, are there any other steps that need to be taken in order for Mr. McAvoy to get what he needs done? It sounds like this is a prerequisite for his request. What I'm trying to understand is what's the whole process that's needed to get what he needs done?
We will need a short outage for the neighborhood in order to run the new secondary. We're not digging up the street, but we also need to put in the conduit for this customer also, because we have to intercept his in order to get to the next
Okay.
one.
So step one would be for us to approve this with the conditions that Chuck Dam has outlined. Step two would be you guys just coordinate with Mr. McAvoy, or is there anything else you need from us, or how can we ensure that he gets what he needs?
Basically, just pass this one.
With the conditions that we're gonna place.
If the homeowner at 3 Arbella had not come up with his or her request, you would have had to do this upgrade anyway. Was this a very coincidental situation?
It was.
All right, so since it's come up, you say, oh, we can kill two birds with one stone here, so to speak.
Yes.
And how long should Mr. McAvoy wait to hear from National Grid after this first step is completed?
I would have to speak to a scheduler and what the underground schedule is like at this point in time.
How long would it take to get him an answer?
And why don't you add that to my 48 hours? list?
Okay, okay, that's great, that's great. I'm comfortable.
Okay, are we ready to make a motion?
So I
Yes.
think I need to
We-
move to, are we ready to close the evidentiary portion
Yes.
of the public hearing? Okay, so I move that the select board close the evidentiary portion of the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Anne says yes,
Yes.
John says yes. Then Becky, you get to make the next motion.
Doesn't have this.
You don't have this, of course. I move that the select board approve the National Grid's petition to install approximately 5 feet of underground conduit from MH3 to customer at 3 Arbella Street with the stipulations proposed by the Director of Public Works. Is there a second?
Second.
Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Anne says yes,
Yes.
John says yes.
So I just request, Madam Chair, that we add this to our action item list to follow up. Greg, if you're going to get some answers from National Grid within 48 hours, then maybe at our next meeting, we could hear what those answers are regarding the work on Arbella and Black Earth.
In that motion, there were stipulations. Are these stipulations already stated, or can they be added to based upon the discussion here?
You approve, your motion was to,
Based on the
Those
stipulations
This is in
that
Chuck's
are here.
email.
And we will take National Grid's word that once the secondary line is in, it will be possible to deal with the situation at 5 Arbella. Okay.
Good to go.
Look forward to hearing from you in 48 hours.
Could you include your email on that communication?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, if Mr. McAvoy still has his hand up, or
Oh.
if it's just a leftover.
Mr. McAvoy,
I'm sorry, that's still up from the last time. I don't know how to,
Okay.
Okay. okay.
thank you.
The next item on our agenda are interviews for the Harbor Advisory Committee. And let's see, we've got a Y and a Z. Why don't we take Peter Yuckins first in alphabetical, since he's in alphabetical order?
Yukins.
Yuckins, thank you.
Common mistake. My name is Peter Yukins. Lived in town 20-some years, up for the position of Harbor Advisory. I've been commercial fishing, recreational fishing, charter fishing in the harbor for 20 years. So sort of committed to being in and out of it and all the ins and outs of the harbor. And sort of interested in being more involved in the infrastructure aspect of it and sort of accessibility by the public to the harbor. And it's the short of it.
Questions, John?
Yeah, Peter, thanks for volunteering here. You've been here for quite a while, and you've spoken with folks on the Harbor Committee, have you?
Yep, yeah. Brian, Chris Combe, Jim Doucette, all those people, yeah.
Okay. A specific reason that you're interested in joining the committee, because you've been around for 20 years and maybe everything's gone well until now you've got an opinion on something that...
Well, I mean, to be honest, I didn't really understand that there was sort of a position. I was sort of a
Okay,
passive observer of the entire scenario. Being heavily involved in the commercial side and the recreational side, I sort of have a pretty good, unique aspect of keeping a balance to the harbor. I'd really like to not lose the commercial side of it, but I don't want to make this place an industrial harbor by any means. I think there's a lot of opportunity to get the community involved in the harbor and on the water. Seems like a lot of people don't realize that we have such great access to such a great spot that we can kind of help them be a little more introduced to it.
Becky?
Yes, thank you, Peter, very much for stepping up and offering. Do you have the time to put into the committee?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I work full-time in the summer, 7 days a week, and then I commercial fish in the winter. But most nights and weekends are wide available, and in the winter, I'm actually a little bit slower and have a lot more time for sort of planning and researching and such. My summers tend to be a bit hectic, but I'm getting away from sort of the 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. schedule and starting to leave a little time for sort of family and other structures. So,
Thank you. Are there any, with your 20 years of experience in our harbor, which has, I think, historically been a working harbor, is there anything that you see that you feel the town needs to more urgently address from a commercial perspective?
well, I'm finding out about the slips going on that are going in the Fisherman's Wharf area, and I think that's a great step to continue the commercial aspect to it while keeping it in an organized manner. I just don't want it to be too far in the background of once we get a few things set up for the commercial guys that it's okay, you guys are all set, now we're gonna move on. But I still want my thing sort of addressed as well. I really like the mooring setup and how we're encouraging more and more boats to be a part of the harbor. So, but doing that in a responsible way would be a high priority. Mouth of the harbor is a bit of a chaos scenario and it has some things that need to be addressed. So that's interesting to me and trying to figure out a way to lead people to be able to access and enjoy it as much as possible, but be incredibly safe around it. Sand Dollar Cove is a bit scary to me as a boater, so that's one thing that I'd like to kind of take a look at and learn more about.
Well, thank you. I think the perspective that you would bring is one that, while we do have some representation of the commercial fishermen on that committee, I think it's you would bring an even deeper perspective of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
John? Oh, I already asked you, sorry. Brian?
No, once again, Becky stole my thunder. I'm good. Yeah, you.
My questions have been asked and answered. Thank you very much for volunteering.
In that case, John? Explain your interest in, yes, sorry. Yep.
Hi.
Two Sean's, no way.
Hi, my name is Sean Zahn. I live at 9 Loading Place. I'm a recreational boater here in the harbor. I've lived here since 2005. My background is I worked for Delta Airlines. I was a safety environmental coordinator, along with being an aircraft mechanic. I was very involved with all the safety for the Northeast, safety and environmental. Working with the harbor plans for the airport with Massport, and all the Environmental Protection Act, all that kind of stuff with the government bodies. I am currently retired. I serve on the ZBA committee. I try to stay very involved with all the things in the town. I work with, currently I do a lot with the American Legion, the Rotary, and then I'm just looking for all that I can be involved with. So help out as much as I can.
Becky?
Yes. Hi, Sean. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You've given a lot of your time to the town, and I think the town is benefited greatly from that. I do have one question regarding your application. And you said that you would like to see, and I'm quoting here, us move forward in a very positive and protective way, serving both our citizens and our businesses. And I wasn't clear on what you meant by that in terms of very positive and protected. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Sure. As we move forward with the changes that are going on with like climate change and things like that, as we've noticed with the rise in water that we have and all that stuff, we've got to move forward with the harbor. But we want to always keep a balance with our business and the recreational boaters. We want to protect both at all times. And and also protect the environmental impact that some of these things that we do have. So that's what I'm referring to.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your answer.
So, as you say, you're retired, so during the summer you read around the water, or that's it?
Around the water. I'm always around with, talking with Brian, staying in touch with him. When I'm out on the water, I constantly let him know I'm out there. If he ever needs help with anything. I try to stay in touch.
And do you, obviously besides the environmental issues, are there anything you put your finger on as to what's problematic that the Harbor Advisory Committee could look at, try to improve?
Well, there's several things we got. The way sometimes it can be kind of a little wild west out there. Some of my concerns, some of the safety stuff that goes on, are, Brian and Todd and all them. They do an awesome job with the resources they have. But that's some of my concern what goes on. And then just look at, again with the environmental stuff, looking at what's going to happen with all the rise in water. The launch service I thought was a huge, great thing that was going on here. That we've had working with I handled the red, white, and blue breakfast. I'm the one that sets that up, Don McCory and myself, and we used the launch service for that. And what a huge impact that had for that, and the amount of traffic that it reduced. Those are the kind of things that you have to go beyond on a little different things. We don't realize what impacts that we have when we change something.
Yeah, just to kind of pull that thread a little bit, your experience is very varied in terms of both environmental protection and, your interest as a boater. I'm trying to kind of pinpoint where you think you're going to apply your expertise, because some of the climate work that's being done is for the town is being done by other committees as opposed to Harbor Advisory. So just kind of staying focused on Harbor Advisory. Do you have some priorities in mind?
Well, they're already looking at some of the stuff that I had, questions about, like the ramp access fees, some of the mooring questions that are going on, that kind of things, kind of keeping a balance out there and keeping things where they're safe.
Thank you. No.
I think most of the questions have already been asked. You did mention the launch service. Are you a user of the launch service or an
No,
observer?
just for that time.
Okay,
I have a slip here, so.
okay, but you you have a slip. Oh, very good. So you're set in that regard.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
big thing that came up with that launch thing is a lot of people that used it during that time, during the red, white, and blue. A lot of those people had never been on the harbor. And that was a big comment. They really got an idea what the harbor.
I know they shuttled from here up to.
Yeah, we're right from here, the back parking lot of them.
I was aware of that. So you're already out with the ZBA once a week. You're
Yep.
working through the days of the week here. This is another one. Okay. Okay, you have the time to do that, well, you said you're retired, but,
Yeah, I am retired.
good.
Okay, all my questions have been asked, thank you very much. Sometimes when we have more than one applicant for a position, we take a week to, 2 weeks to think about it. Sometimes we just make a decision. What is the board's feeling about this situation? Becky?
I think we have two incredible candidates who would both would bring a lot. But I am inclined to have the commercial business with some deeper representation. And I'm comfortable going ahead this evening.
John?
I think we can move ahead this evening. I'm not sure that there's anything coming up in the next 2 weeks at the Harbor Advisory. Well, they have a meeting tomorrow?
The forum tomorrow night, yeah. Well, that's the task force.
That's-
It's a
that's-
task force, it's related, it's not exactly, it's overlap. Okay, yeah. I think we can move ahead this evening.
Kathy?
Yeah.
You were looking at Brian when you said Becky.
Yeah, right.
See this?
Yeah.
See that right there?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm okay moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion?
You have a motion to, I guess, vote on a Harbor Advisory Committee member for a term to expire on June 30th of 2027.
Pick somebody.
Okay, excuse me. All right. All right.
Pick one.
I move that Peter Yukins,
Here's the,
yes, okay, that Peter Yukins be appointed to the Harbor Advisory Committee for a term to expire June 2027.
there's a second.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Ready to vote?
Well, discussion? Just a
Discussion,
minute.
sure.
I just want to recognize Sean's experience, and I'm just wondering if there would be an opportunity, Greg, to include, I mean, you're already on the ZBA, et cetera, but we do have climate initiatives that the town is pursuing, and having someone with his background on those committees might, if you're open to it, I think that would be a great place for your experience, if you're open to it. But you've got great experience, and I don't want to discount that at all.
Agreed.
And particularly interest,
Yeah, I
because you
mean,
volunteered that.
just listening to you talk about things I have no knowledge about, it's impressive.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
Well, I've known Peter
Most of my life.
when you were a pain in the ass.
Yep.
You know, I applaud that he stepped up. I think that the commercial interests are important, but I do also know Sean, not as long as I know you. And I know that the commitment he has to the harbor and the recreational boaters that we have, which are a lot more than the commercial boaters. And I think that his expertise and his been able to, he probably knows half the boaters out there from a recreational standpoint. I think that serves well in this advisory. Okay, be able to speak to what the recreational boaters are looking at, and that's what I'm looking for. Someone, because again, there weren't any commercial boaters out at St. Dollar Cove a couple of years ago. I know Sean was, because I was on his boat. So, I think that as we try to improve the access for other recreational boaters and improve the harbor for recreational boaters, I think that's what I'm looking for, and someone who's got the time to do it.
Good question. Who else is on, what's the makeup of the rest of the committee? Because that's what we're trying to do, is make sure you're both great, you know,
Yeah,
there's
no
no doubt about it. What we're trying to make sure is we've got all of the representative constituents on the advisory committee.
John has the book open.
I'm looking at the book, because I mean, that's the first thing I turn to.
Yeah,
And I don't know how much turnover there's been in the committee, but right now,
Most committees have
they've been pretty,
active turnover.
okay, well, listed here, Dan Gray, Carl Doan, Chris Cobb, Steve Lauber, Bill Leahy, Dan Lane, Sam Crocker, and Steve Mayo.
I will just add that my commercial aspect too is half of my interest in the boating. That I'd run charters all summer long, and I'm a fishing guide in the summer for recreational boating, and I run a kids fishing program. So my involvement in this harbor predominantly is on sort of a recreational for hire side, and that my commercial aspect is a winter aspect, and that I run commercial bass and lobster stuff incrementally out of the harbor, but I'm interested in the infrastructure of the commercial.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just didn't want to be.
You got a
Full
full
commercial.
in both places. So the commercial folks right now, Sam Crocker, and that's even a little bit more unique because he has a marina
Yeah.
rather than being a commercial fisherman per se.
and Jim
And,
Doucette.
What about,
Jim Doucette is the
Jim
other,
Doucette.
he's a lobster.
Yeah, that's correct.
Dan Gray?
But he's not on the list here unless he
I think he
joined.
replaced.
He
Yeah,
replaced somebody.
yeah, we just
We
voted him
appointed
in.
Oh, well, no, we have, and I think, I don't know why, and I could be wrong, is Dan a commercial fisherman?
Dan has a commercial lobster boat in the harbor. He's part-time. Yeah, he has a full-time job. But yes, he does have a commercial boat right now.
He's resigned.
I was
He
gonna say, I thought he resigned.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, thanks.
Dan and Stephen resigned.
All right. I know there was some turnover here. I just couldn't remember. So, all right. So out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I guess that's got a list of 8 people, maybe 2.5 commercial, so to speak. Something like
And
that.
if I may,
Yes, Becky?
Bion is on the meeting. Should we, if they are the Harbor Advisory Committee, should we ask for Bion's input?
I don't believe that Byron will speak to that, but you can ask him.
Okay, why don't, it sounds to me from that list that there are several recreational.
There are at least 3, maybe 4, yes, that are recreational. I don't know who is, I guess Doucette has replaced Gray, but Carl Doan, Chris Cobb,
Certainly. Yep.
Steve Lauber, Bill Leahy,
Mhm.
and Steve Mayo.
Not to be picky, but it's actually Cone.
Yeah.
Oh, see you.
Oh, that's correct. Chris Cohn.
Oh, it's funny, it's the same thing.
Okay, in the light of that discussion, we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? Nobody's
Yes.
standing up, so Becky, the motion is to appoint.
Peter Young.
Peter,
Peter Hughes, sorry.
Yes.
Brian?
No.
Kathy?
Yes.
John?
yes.
And I say yes. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Sean. But we look forward to seeing you here another night
Oh, yeah.
with another application.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks,
Thank you
Yeah.
very much for.
Okay, now, the next item on the agenda is the Community Preservation Committee project review. And who is here to speak?
I'm not sure, I thought Joan.
Jake.
Joe McDonald's on.
Okay,
is she
fine.
on
Okay, fine. Joe, would you?
yeah, this is, I'm sorry.
Hi.
I didn't-
Hi, everybody.
Would you walk us through this?
Do you want me to explain anything? Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions?
I do not.
John?
Yeah. Yeah, Joan, we all have the list in front of us. With how many projects, do you have a difficult, I guess my question is, were there any projects that were declined? Or do you struggle to get people to apply for these programs?
The only project that I can tell you that was sort of revamped was a request by Parks and Rec for walkway restoration at Mascanoma Park. And after the couple of floodings that we've had in the last couple of months, we went back to them and suggested that maybe that would be money that shouldn't be spent at the moment. So we changed that into a engineering study to make sure that everything is ADA compatible, and they agreed that that was money better spent that way for now.
Well,
But other than that, we have under open space and recreation, we have 8 projects. Affordable housing, we have the Affordable Housing Trust, and if you have any questions about that, I can definitely go into that. And under historic preservation, we have 4 projects, including the church steeple at the First Parish Church and a couple of projects at the Historical Museum. So, yeah, I mean, we have a good amount of projects.
I'll take you off the spot. My question is, have we used community preservation money before on the First Parish Church?
We have. We did restoration on the First Parish Church before. And it's not about religion, and it's not about the congregation, it's more about the building and preserving a historic building in the center of Manchester.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, I just had a question. Do any other houses of worship in town fall under that category, or is First Parish unique and it would be the only house of worship that we would use these types of funds for?
I don't know that any other house of worship has approached us for funds at any particular time, and I think we'd probably have to look at what the benefit of it would be to preserve another building in town. I really don't have a definitive answer on that. But I think the parish church, because it was a meeting house and because it is the center of town, has become the focal point of downtown, and that's why it is allowable to do that, to spend money this way, as long as it doesn't have anything to do with the religion.
Right. I guess I just would encourage the CPC to understand the other houses of worship in town and whether or not they would ever be afforded the same consideration. And if not, that's a good answer to have in your pocket for town meeting when this goes in front of the voters, because there are other houses of worship in the downtown, some lovely structures, and better to know in advance what the answer is rather than get asked and not know the answer.
I think to Joan's point is.
I understand.
It's a house of worship, but it's more.
No, I get it, but I'm just trying to prepare the
People that are
team.
coming in from the harbor.
Right. Right. It's about preparing them to answer
Oh, no.
questions that they may get asked. That's
If I may, Anne,
Certainly, Becky.
I would just reiterate what Joan said, which is that it was originally the meeting house.
Right.
And along those lines, that's why it's a friendship tree and not a Christmas tree. I don't know if that has any bearing on what Kathy's saying. Yes, it is currently used as a house of worship, but its origins were that it was a meeting house, or a meeting house for town, and therefore certainly merits community preservation support.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's as much about the structure as well as its role in 17, well, actually it was built 1809. So the first half of that century, but equally important, it's a historic register building. It's a historic building, and this is all about historic restoration. Now, if there are other buildings in town that fall in that category, they get considered. But that's really the driving force here, because it's historic.
Totally agree. I
Reservation.
just think they need to do their inventory and have those answers prepared.
Yeah, agreed.
Kathy, I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
and we'll discuss it at the next meeting. Absolutely.
Are there any other comments from the board on anything on the CPC list?
I think I just had a question on the affordable housing line item. What, it wasn't just clear what that was.
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again? I
I'm sorry,
can't hear
the
what you said.
Affordable Housing Trust,
Yeah,
$200,000 for that initiative. Sounds great, but are there any more specifics around that?
What are you doing with the money?
so the Affordable Housing Trust has been very happy to have the generous contributions from the CPC for the last 7 years or whatever it is that we've been working. We've accumulated over $1 million. We have it invested in some CDs and, not long-term, but we can get to the money if we need the money. It's important for us to have a substantial amount of money to be able to offer to a developer or to be able to purchase a piece of land in town, so that if the situation arises and we do see a project that's viable, we'll be able to jump on it. So we meet almost monthly, the Affordable Housing Trust, which I know you all know, but we're constantly talking to other to residents and homeowners, landowners that might have opportunities for us. So it is a lot of money, but it's adding to the greater good.
So
the
you're
bigger
building a
cause.
nest egg that may be used to purchase land or other property for affordable housing purposes.
Does this go with a number of affordable housing?
I'm sorry, I can't
Sorry.
hear.
Joan has covered it perfectly. We're just,
You're building a nest egg?
yeah, we're
to-
looking for a project,
Yeah, got
and when we have a project, we'll have some money.
Right.
Oh, thank you, Muffin.
One question, Joan, I think it's really pretty much been a couple of $100,000 every year, hasn't it? Isn't that
For
the
the
number?
last-
So pretty much all
Yeah,
of
for
the
the
money that
last-
they've accumulated has come through CPC allocations.
And a private donation.
Oh, there've been private donations as well.
There
Okay,
have been private donations, yes.
good.
Are there any questions from the audience here? Is there anyone online who has a hand up?
If I may say one more thing, we met with the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago and went through all of the projects, and they gave thumbs up for everything, so they're on board with everything.
Thank you.
Senator
Thank
Mellish
you.
just raised her hand.
Okay. Sarah, Mellish,
Yes, in full disclosure, I am a member of the Finance Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust. And one of the things we've learned is we've worked with POAP with respect to redeveloping the MHA sites. If we're going to attract a developer, we need approximately 5 to 10% of the value of a development in order to encourage somebody to come in. So a $35 million project, you'll see, we're just barely squeaking by. Thanks.
thank you, Sarah. Okay,
Okay, I'll make a motion. if you wish.
would you make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the list of community preservation projects
As presented.
as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Becky? Becky said yes. Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ann says yes.
John says yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Joan. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry for the
Thank you very much.
interrogation, but that's what we're here for.
I know, that's good. See you later.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the harbor discussion, and the first part of that is the management plan task force. And I see Pirate Bion here. Is, Greg, who is,
He's a friendly pirate.
yes,
So yeah, I think Byron can certainly start us off,
okay,
and we can go from there.
So,
yes.
I can only see half my screen. Good evening, everybody. The Harbor Management Task Force has held several meetings so far. There was a site visit with Urban Harbors Institute back in the fall. We took them on the boat with the members of the task force and took them up and down the coast. They had a lot of questions. We spent about 4 hours with them. Subsequent meetings were sharing of maps and that were provided by the Urban Harbors Institute, and the development of relevant issues in the harbor to include to obviously navigation. I had to say
Joan,
that
would
first.
you mute yourself?
Right, so navigation, sea level rise, which is very much a big deal in plans these days. Resources, which include fisheries and eelgrass. Chapter 90, the Chapter 91 was discussed quite a bit because of the amount of Phil Tideland's real estate we have in Manchester. So after pulling together all the different pieces that should be in the plan from these discussions, the group decided that tomorrow night, and hopefully everyone's seen all the literature, that there'll be a public breakout table session up at the high school from 7 to 8:30 with tables with all of the different topics that the group's come up with to date, and to listen to the public and see if there's anything that's been missed or if any of those need to become more of a focus. With that information, the contractor will go back and compile that data. Discussions will continue at task force meetings, and there will be, I'm guessing, at least 2 more public sessions before a draft document is put forward.
That's at the high school cafeteria?
Yes.
High school,
Yep.
middle school
7 to
cafeteria.
8:30 tomorrow night.
7 to
6:30 or 7 to 8:30?
Yes.
6:30.
I got 6:30 here on the,
8. Okay,
I think 6:30 to 8.
6:30.
Ion's gonna be.
We'll be
late.
setting up at 6, sit between 6 and 6:30. The flyer that was distributed should say 7.
It says 7 to 8:30, the flyer.
well, if someone shows up early, they can help you set up.
There you go.
Becky, do you have any comments on that report? Okay. Brian?
No, what she said.
Just overall timeline, I'm a little fuzzy. We talked
That's-
about, the public forum tomorrow night, probably 2 other public meetings. What's the overall timeline?
So the overall timeline from when the contractor was brought on board could be a year to 18 months if the town had gone with the state plan, which it looks like at this time that won't be proposed. Could be up to 2 years. So probably another year, which
So-
is standard.
When can we expect to hear from the task force again, I guess, to give us an update on the work and the timeline?
Well, I would recommend that they certainly reach out after all the data is compiled from tomorrow night's meeting, and I would guess probably 2 or 3 more meetings before the discussion reaches a point where they would want to share. But that's up to them. That's their decision to make, and certainly I'll take that back to them. And
So what's
have them put that
confusing
on their
me
agenda.
is, we've signed a contract with these people, Greg?
Yes,
Okay, usually in a contract of this nature, there would be intermediate milestones by which there would need to be a report. So that's kind of all I'm asking for is, we
Yeah.
shouldn't have to wait a year or two for information. What are those intermediate milestones?
I'll dig out the contract, I don't have it in front of me, but
All right.
yes.
So could we put that on the action list just to get us, what are the intermediate milestones on that contract? When can we expect to hear back from, you know, from the contractor or bio, whatever the progress milestones are?
Sure.
That'd be great, thank you.
No?
I'm looking forward to tomorrow night.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you. The next part of the harbor discussion is the launch service. And we have, perhaps I should back off. Is there anyone here who wants to talk about the harbor management study task force? Is there anyone online? Okay. The next is the launch service. There is, the packet is online. It's a little late to tell you that now. But there's a long description of the launch service and the parameters around it in our packet. So we know quite a lot. And thank you, Kathy, for helping put together that. So, Bion, can you just briefly lay out for those people who haven't read it what this project is?
Well, you're right, first of all, to thank Kathy and
Peter Twining.
Peter Twining did yeoman's work with all of the information to pull together the business plan for this. Basically, if this is forwarded, so at this point, if the select board and the finance committee both approve for this to go to the warrant, one of the milestones required is that I identify and get a verbal commitment from enough voters, that number being 70, to make the launch self-sustaining. So just waiting to hear on that. And then the next piece, if at town meeting this is approved, and this is not for a water taxi or a harbor tour, this is just straight up launch service for mooring holders, will be to get those people who've made a verbal commitment to make a payment. The fee will go up to $575 for the season for the boaters. And I've committed that we have appropriate staffing to operate the launch for the full season. I have, since discussions with the finance committee, heard from all of the launch drivers who are interested in coming back as well.
So I think we might want to just back up for a minute.
Yeah.
And so the launch service has been operated by a private entity. That private entity no longer wishes to offer the launch service. Tom Baker, who is operating the launch service, approached Bion to see if the town would be interested in operating the launch service instead of Tom through his Manchester Mooring Service operation. So since that time, we have been working on the business plan to develop a proposal that would pay for itself, be self-sufficient. That was a primary goal that I think you and the Finance Committee both have had from the get-go. And as Brian indicated, he and Peter and Kathy have been working on that and have developed a plan. It obviously is dependent on people signing up to make it a go. I think Brian is optimistic that those subscribers will materialize. But it would be contingent on getting sufficient numbers to sign up.
Right.
So I just wanted to provide that
Yes.
little bit of
There-
background.
We would buy the launches from Tom Baker, and that's 120.
125,000 is the capital cost.
125,000, and that would come from the Harbor Fund?
Well, it would technically come from our fund balance,
Ah.
but it would be repaid over time.
It comes from the town's fund balance.
Right, there's not sufficient money in the harbor fund balance.
Okay,
But,
so it would come from the town's fund balance, free cash in the old, speak.
yes,
And would be repaid, and the repayment would start on year 3?
year 2.
Year 2. I would like to recommend one small change, which it may possible, is that a firm commitment to pay for launch service be a check in the treasurer's hand. The check.
Yes,
not
no,
the-
that's part of the plan, is that if Bion gets the go-ahead here tonight,
Yes,
he's ready to send an email to all the mooring holders and get as many checks in hand
okay,
prior to town
this
meetings.
is not a verbal commitment.
No. It's a commitment. People would have to pay for this service in advance. I think the key thing for the board to understand is that we're making an honest estimate as to how much we can charge for the service. It's a little bit of a guess because the price has been pretty standard for 3 years and we're raising it to $575. So we are in the plan where we were allowing for 3 years to break even before we say this is not going to work, sell the boats. Okay, so that's something we hadn't discussed before, and whether or not that's agreeable to you is up for discussion. But this launch service, signing up for the service means paying. This year, we're getting a little bit of a late start because people probably have been, I don't know if they've sent their bills already for the mooring fees and everything. But normally, when you get your invoice for the mooring, you could sign up with an opportunity to pay for the launch service in advance.
But the idea is not that you get a verbal commitment, but that
No,
these.
no. This is money in hand.
Okay, by April 15th?
That was my understanding.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
Brian?
then it would be up to the voters. Yeah.
We're talking full payment or deposit?
No, full payment. Everything boating, you pay up front for the season, and this would be no different.
Becky, do you have any comments?
She's in Montana official. Hi, can you
Yeah,
see her?
it looks like we did lose her.
We
Okay,
did lose her. One point of information, Greg, I just noticed, I do think you need to just tweak the business plan here. So the verbal discussion we had with FinCom was that the service would be, in the off-season, would be operating, not just on the weekends, but every day, but we wouldn't need the extra staff during the week. So I think there's some verbal discussion we had with FinCom that did not get into the updated document.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? 'Cause-
okay, how are you operating? How does launch service operate without staff?
So additional staff, I said. So Bion is bringing on additional staff, but when there's low demand, his plan was, correct me if I'm wrong, Bion, to use your harbor master staff Monday through Friday, or during those low periods, you can clarify. But the additional staff that you're bringing on for the summer is in season and maybe a little bit on the shoulder season. You had outlined a staffing plan for Greg.
Correct. Starting the second Monday in May and going through the third week in October, we would have dedicated launch staff. Now, if the launch service is running in May and large parts of June, later September into October, going to be days when there won't be a need for a launch driver in the middle of October on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The harbor staff will be on duty for those, as you said, Kathy, the shoulders, or the first hour of the morning or the last hour of the afternoon. I did fully staff the launch for the season, starting the second week in May through the third week in October, with dedicated staff.
So the plan is to use town employees to drive the launch? Town harbor employees?
Well, the launch drivers will be employees of the harbor staff. If at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the evening,
I guess
there's
my question
one.
more correctly is, will the funding that you bring in allow you to reimburse the town for time that assistant harbor masters use driving launches?
Right, well, the harbor masters are already be on duty. If there's one launch customer left out on their boat at 8 o'clock in the evening, I would be inclined to let the launch driver go. And then the harbor master who's already on duty, being paid as a harbor master, would be more than capable of covering that. You know, we're not talking about a Saturday or Sunday when there's a half a dozen boaters still out during our operational hours. This is during the slowest parts of the season on the slowest days.
Are there other questions from the board?
Yeah, but Bayan, I've got a couple if I can ask.
Sure.
I'm trying to get my head around what the potential market is here. I see in your paperwork here, you say about 360 mooring holders that don't have access to a launch service through a private club membership. And how many of those 360 have dinghies? Because if you've got a dinghy, you wouldn't necessarily need a launch service. You use your dinghy.
Right, and that was the same situation before there was before Manchester Mooring started their business. So, you know, people who sign up, some of them have actually kept their dinghy spot at the dock. Not all have surrendered. So, you know, if they want to keep a dinghy at the dock, I don't know why we would discourage that. I think we would certainly let people pay to keep their dinghy there. And if they don't want to, then that certainly would be their choice.
Well, I mean, it's more to the point, you know, who's got a motivation to join? You've got, what, 57 or 60 last year that joined, and would be people that don't have a dinghy. If you do have a dinghy, I would think you'd be probably inclined to use it. How many dinghies are in the harbor right now? Or not right now, but and last summer, say.
So between Town Hall, Tux, and Reed Park, 250.
All right. So I'm looking at that. The people that have access to a private service, most of them don't have dinghies. And so you've got 360, of which at least a half of those probably have dinghies. So the potential market might be 100 to 150 people. And I don't know how they were getting to their boats last year because they didn't have a dinghy. But
yeah,
they may be borrowing a dinghy.
Some are boat club members. You're right. Some do share.
Okay.
But, you know, I don't think the fact that they already have dinghies means that they wouldn't be interested in this service. The 60 people who have launch service now had dinghies in the harbor too. Certainly some of them, some were boat club members. So they made the choice that they'd reached the point where showing up at the docks, stepping on a boat and being delivered to their boat with all their gear was preferable to dealing with the dinghy. So I can't predict what number will. My goal is to reach that number that satisfies the break-even number for all of the folks who really want this launch service, so that it can continue to remain. So
Okay,
I don't know.
All right,
I can't
that's
predict.
fine. I understand the numbers are a little soft, but there are people that own dinghies that still want the launch service. Second
Yeah.
question, what can you, I assume that you've spoken with the Gloucester folks who have a system that's working like this. Is that
Yeah,
a
they
correct
just
assumption,
bought
or?
That's correct. They told me this winter they just purchased their second launch.
All right, so that's been successful. So tell me
Yeah,
what.
although they say their price
What?
point's too low. They're at $350, and they feel that 500's more the number. So
that's one of the things I think we need to learn if we move forward, is what's the right price point? Because I just learned Marblehead charges almost $1,000 for their launch. So there's a lot of wiggle room between, we kind of went conservative with the 575, not jumping up too much. But we'll see if that attracts people, and if not, we don't do it.
Does Gloucester offer a per trip mooring service, or does Marblehead, or is it, hey, you've got to buy in for the whole deal?
Gloucester does offer a per ride.
Because I mean, that's kind of a dangerous thing. People start to do the math. And you can't do that, at least not out of the chute, but got to figure it out. So I was curious about that. Any other observations from Gloucester? How long have they been in business, and it's grown every year, or has not, or what?
Well, so the numbers have increased. What increased? What they actually have a number of people that actually use that as a shuttle to cross the harbor, and people who don't even own boats who use it to get from point A to point B, and pay. Some pay the annual membership fee, and some pay a per ride fee, depending on their pleasure.
Going to the restaurants.
Yep, exactly.
Understood.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Harbor
Potentially
Uber,
there are.
Harbor Uber.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're running a little bit late. Actually, we don't have the schedule at this point, but running later than I would wish. Is there anyone in the room who would like to make a short comment? Okay. Is there anyone online who would like to make a short comment? Okay. We will.
Garbaras.
Garth.
Yes, I'm supportive of.
Garth.
I think
Tell us your name. We have your name in front of us, but give us your address as well.
I've lived on 11 Jersey Lane, and I've lived here for 47 years. My name is Gar Morse.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
So I am 100% supportive of using our harbor and making it available to people other than people who happen to be members of the Manchester Yacht Club or the Boat Club, for that matter, so that we are an open harbor, and I think that's a very good thing. On the other hand, that's the other part. I think that the taxpayers of Manchester should not be subsidizing yachtsmen. If you got a boat, you shouldn't ask how much it costs to keep it up. That's I don't know who that quote is from, but so I would say that it is critical that this service be self-supporting, and if it is not self-supporting, I think that the folks running it need to come back to the select board and say, you know, we got a problem here. That's my comment. So, but I think in general, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Okay, I think we I think I am looking for a motion to support the launch service as described in the extensive business plan.
So moved.
Second.
Becky is still absent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
No, I just want to point out that, to John's point, recreational boating starts now. Instead of, it's kind of like flying first class as opposed to coach. Now you get to start enjoying the boating when you get on the launch as opposed to rowing up to it.
Yeah.
Particularly in Area 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rowing to Area 7 is tough.
Long
Yep.
haul.
Okay. Ready to vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Ann says yes.
John, yes.
Very good. Thank you, Bion.
Thank you, everybody, very much. I've got work to do. I'll see you around.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is Parks and Recreation Committee pickleball court sound mitigation. And maybe Greg, you could outline what the situation is.
Sure. Pickleball court opened up last year. A new service for the town, a new amenity. I think it's fair to say that there are concerns, certainly by some neighbors, that the noise that it produced was disruptive, and that desire to mitigate that noise became a strong request. Finding a solution to that has been slow in coming. The Park and Rec folks have been working to try to come up with solutions that would work. And started off with some sound measurements, reached out to the Pickleball USA Association for some assistance. They hired a sound expert to do an analysis of the courts and what kind of noise production we can expect without any sort of mitigation and what we might expect with some mitigation. That report recommended a number of possible steps from requiring different equipment that is less impactful in terms of noise to pursuing sound barriers on the courts, and recommended that if we were to pursue sound barriers, that the fencing should be higher. So the fencing was low on the two sides, and is it 8 feet on the front or 10 feet on the front?
It's 10.
10.
Right now.
Recommended going to 12 feet for a height. So that's one of the first steps that the Park and Rec pursued then, was securing a vendor to try to raise that fencing in order to accommodate the eventual barriers. Like a lot of things, it took a lot longer to secure a vendor and make that happen. I understand, I think that vendor's finally ready to go sometime this month.
Right.
To install the new fencing. And in the meantime, during that time, pursue different options for sound barriers. We had the Park and Rec folks brought in some vendors to try out some barriers, to put them up on the wall, on the fence, to see what they look like, and to try to get a sense of what sort of attenuation they would provide. So fast forward to today. We do have 3 formal quotes from 3 vendors to install barriers, soundproofing barriers on the courts. Obviously, it won't eliminate the noise; it will attenuate it. The goal, I think, is to get it to a 55 decibel reading on the outside of the courts. Today, it's probably in the 80 range. I might be a little high on that.
Yeah, that's inside, outside.
Yeah, depending on where you are, of course, in terms of that noise. So I think this evening, the select board is wanting to discuss with Park and Rec the possible next steps in putting up sound barriers. Look at those 3 quotes and see which of those 3, if any, you want to move forward with. And if there are other measures that might be pursued as well. So I think that's a fair summary, Phil.
Fair.
Certainly Cheryl can fill in some details that I have left out.
Yeah, no, that's a fair summary, and I don't think we need to beat it anymore, so that's enough. So as you can see, if you guys have had a chance to look at those estimates, they're all very different and very, try to include actually the visuals. This is actually, I'm sorry, Debbie, would you mind handing this around? The last company on there didn't have any pictures, but this was the best they could send me, was their fact sheet. It does include some pictures of their product. Well, no, we haven't even discussed this at a Park and Rec committee meeting yet, so we don't have a recommendation. So I was unsure exactly what you were looking for, just to see where we're at, or if you were looking to kind of take it from here. Sean, the chairman, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I mean, overall, yeah, I guess it's a case of, well, what Cheryl said, we're here sharing where we are right now as far as we've been working on this, since last summer. As you know, it takes a while to get bids and move forward with projects. And yeah, there have been a number of meetings that the Park and Rec has, obviously meeting once a month. And there's been a lot of town input on the pickleball courts in general. I mean, I would say as far as overall, it's the vast majority of the town. If I were to say, we've had a number of meetings, there have been 4 people that were opposed to it. I would say there was 50 people that came that were for the park. And I would say, just my personal opinion, if you took a vote of the 5,000 people in town or so, 4,996 would be for the park.
That's one of the problems with democracy, is it kind of walks over the minority. And
there have been, but besides the sound barriers, there have been numerous concessions that are unique compared to the other parks in town. Meaning, as far as the start time is 8 a.m. Every other park is sunrise you can be in. It closes at sunrise. There are cameras that are in the park. There are police that patrol by there to make sure the rules are followed. There is the Park and Rec and the director who has come on weekends when issues have arose. There's also a private citizen that shows up there before 8 o'clock to make sure no one even goes, not even to play, but no one even goes on the park to just stretch out or put their sneakers on or what have you. So I would say I understand what you're saying about the minority, but I think the committee so far has done a number of things to understand the challenges that some of the minority have. Also, another thing, as a private citizen, I live on that street. I'm right up the street from that. I work from home. I have my windows open. I can hear it. There were 3 individuals who were obviously opposed to the park or have concerns with the noise. There are more people in that neighborhood that enjoy the park and are for the park. It's just unfortunately, they're not as vocal, and as you know, sometimes, rightly or wrongly, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So that's where Park and Rec is.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. The testing that was the testing done with any of these products at all, or was it just general sound dampening?
Yeah, some of these products were used,
Okay,
yeah, so like prototypes of the bottom one, this SLNCR.
okay, a prototype of that was used, and I see the picture here. The other pictures tend to be fairly complete in covering the whole wall. That seems to be kind of in the middle of the fence. It's got a foot or so below and space above.
The ones we would get would be 12 feet. We would go from the top of the fence to the bottom, because it is better the more coverage there is.
All right. So are you making a suggestion or a recommendation with regard to one of these? Well, I mean, you've got a fence that goes pretty high.
Right. I have not had a chance to go over them all with the committee. So they've kind of heard bits and pieces as we've gone along, like you've seen some of the pictures.
We've had bits and pieces, but, to be honest with you, until last week, there was no deadline we need to make. We are moving along, we are following the process. We have another meeting scheduled this week, as we normally do once a month, but we haven't had time to go through as a committee, to go through all of these options and really take a look because of the information that Cheryl just got recently. We've had an idea of what it looks like, but we haven't had a full discussion as a committee.
Okay.
And I can't really order it until I know we have a 12-foot fence. So the fence isn't there. I don't want to order 12-foot panels until I'm 100% sure we have a 12-foot fence, which has been held up.
At this point, I think I would like to hear from one of the neighbors.
Yes, first I would like to say the courts didn't open last year. They opened in July of 2022.
Name and address.
Excuse me?
Name and
Oh, I'm
address.
sorry. Kim Logue, 142 Summer Street. The courts opened in July of 2022. Apparently, they were voted on in 2018 to turn that park into a pickleball court. So why this has taken this long, we're like working backwards. A sound study should have been done before they even went in. There was a sound study that was paid for by the town that suggested the 12-foot fence, use of different equipment, but there's no one there that can monitor that. And I just feel like it's not being taken, the neighborhood concerns aren't being taken seriously. You had USA Pickleball come and do a sound study, which in my opinion is biased. And they put up these panels and we waited months for that report, because I kept asking for that report. And you said, the silver bullet wasn't there that you wanted. And it really doesn't tell you much more than the first one did. I think we're ignoring what the first one said, which is the way to correct the sound is to put a bubble over it, which is not cost effective. And if that can't be done, it should be moved. And I think in all fairness, it should be moved. And I don't think they should open on April 1st if none of this is done, because it's been far too long. Far too long. I know you're working on it, but it's still a noise problem that goes on from April to December. October, November, not as bad. But for 6 months, 7 days a week, it's a good 8 hours during the day that it goes on. And it travels to my second floor and third floor. So you're going to spend money on this, and I don't think it's going to bring it down to 55 decibels. So what do you do at that point when it doesn't correct it? You've already spent money. Why not spend the money to move it? It was suggested that the town replace my windows. Why would I want that? If I did it for me, you have to do it for other people that are affected by the sound. And I don't want to keep my windows closed all summer. What good does that do for me? And it's a great sport, but it's just not in the right location. Carl Schmidt, who did that second report, said it shouldn't be within 200 feet of a home. It's in 100 feet of mine, but really, it should not be between 500 feet in a home. It's according to the first report, but we're ignoring that one for some reason. I don't know why. So it's very frustrating.
Thank you.
Just one point of clarification, because again, I live up that street, I drive by that every day. Yes, it's open 7 days a week from April 1st to December with the weather. It is not 7 days, 12 hours a day. I've driven by there plenty of times where it's empty during the day. Primarily, the busy hours are 8 a.m. in the morning, and then probably, 4 o'clock afterwards as people get off work to play until sunset, so.
I don't agree with you. I live on 140 Summer Street.
Oh, wait. We're not going to, I offered you the courtesy of letting you, but you are welcome to speak. Just identify yourself and give us your address.
Teresa Ramirez, I live in 140 Summer Street, and it's right across from the football court. I agree with Kim, I love to work in the summer outside my house, my garden, and it's just so annoying, with all that noise. And people who bring music and the language, it's horrible. I wish that never happened. As Kim said, it's a great sport. I have nothing against the sport. It's all the commotion that goes around.
Thank you. Yes,
Mary Ellen Edgerton, 6 Forest Street. So I live right, I'm the second house in. Very, very close. I would say 90% of the time, no one's there in the middle of the day. People are there at 8 o'clock in the morning for sure. And then when work gets out. There might be a few people, but all courts are not being used all the time. My kids play all the time. I have 2 concerns. One, putting up this wall, spending a lot of money to do it. If the neighbors that are upset with it are not gonna be happy with that and just want it moved, I understand your points. But if this will not stop and the complaints will go on, why are we gonna spend this much money when they're saying they're only gonna be happy if it's moved? So I'm concerned about that's a lot of money to spend. Also, how the sound is dispersed. Is it gonna, the sound of Summer Street is much louder than pickleball. Like I have my windows open, it doesn't bother me at all. I don't even hear it anymore, but if that sound from Summer is gonna then bounce back up the street on Forest, then that'll be a problem. That'll be much louder than pickleball. I also have a concern about harassment. So some of the neighbors, one of the neighbors harasses people on the courts. So my children's friends were on the court at 8 o'clock, coming off the court, and they were followed, being recorded to their car, followed them around the car. These are like teenage kids. They were scared to death, not knowing what they're doing. So there's gotta be respect in what's going on too. Everyone has their opinion, but let's be respectful of the situation. The majority of people in town love playing. I don't play, I'm injured, but I'm not opposed to it and I live across the street too.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any reaction from the board?
Question.
Yes.
What is the decision we're looking for this evening? Because it sounds like the Park and Rec Committee hasn't even discussed this amongst themselves to advise us, if I understood that correctly.
That is true. Ann asked for an update.
Okay.
Yes, and
So we're not making a decision
My
tonight?
hope
Okay.
was that we would find some way to bring the mitigation forward so we can at least try it as quickly as possible. The courts are opening in 2 weeks. And as was said, they have been annoying for 2.5 years, for over 2 years. They've been annoying to some people.
What is the, may I ask, what is the lead time? Once we decide on a court or a solution for addressing the issue, from the time the order is placed till the time that we're gonna see these, do you have an idea? 4 weeks,
It's
6
been a
weeks?
couple of months in this.
So the top one is a couple of months. The bottom 2 are closer to 6 weeks. From when after the contract's signed.
Greg, do we have the money in hand to pay for any of these?
So there are a couple of options. So there's about roughly 10,000 left in the original funding, once we pay for the bigger fence. And then you could tap some of the dollars in the revolving, parking lot revolving fund. And there's also some dollars in just general field maintenance, park maintenance account. So between those three sources, we could pull together the dollars necessary. Alternatively, you could seek additional dollars from voters at town meeting, obviously delays.
Everything until September.
Well, delays everything until April 25th.
April 25th plus the 2 months to.
Right, plus the order, yeah.
My concern, Madam Chair, is that we went before the town for these funds once. And we've set the precedent that we weren't going to pay for it out of revolving fund. Was it last year, 2 years ago? I'm lost at this point. I think that we should be going, I think there's another question we have to ask the voters if they're prepared to pay additional monies. Also taking another revolving fund. We made the commitment to the voters 2 years ago, I think we have to continue with that course of action, my opinion. I recognize that it delays a lot of things, but I think it's only fair to the voters.
I don't feel comfortable making a purchase decision, just us, without the committee that's been looking at this for months advising us. So I would not be in favor of saying, just go ahead and buy the stuff. You bring up a good point, but it's the town's money. Unfortunately, if we gave the go-ahead to go buy the soundproofing, we're still looking at a couple of months before it's installed anyway. I think the question is, what do we do in the meantime? You know?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Lauren Coons, 5 Ocean Street. This is to the board there. What about setting up a campaign for private funding on that?
I mean, that's something we could look at.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just have a follow-up question. If the neighbors that it's upsetting the most are saying it's not going, the walls are not gonna stop it, so it's still going to be a problem, why would we spend $40,000 or however much an end to put it up if it's not gonna solve the problem?
I'm going to suggest that perhaps the neighbors are not the best experts on successful sound management. And I think before we spend $200,000 to move courts, it behooves us to try sound mitigation.
I agree with that. I don't think it makes, we would have to spend money to move them, right? It makes sense to at least try the sound mitigation. I'm just not comfortable in picking, I don't feel expert enough to look at these options here. You guys have been looking at this in a lot more detail than I have. I just wouldn't feel comfortable in picking an option.
Another
Cheryl had a question.
May I?
Sure.
I'm trying really hard to not have an opinion, although I probably have studied this more than anyone. Because part of me does think money's gonna get spent and it's not gonna be enough, so I don't wanna be the one who wastes the money. But I also think that the bottom company of the one that is the cheapest, I don't wanna go with them because they're the cheapest, but they are 100% focused on pickleball right now. And they are supported by USA Pickleball, who obviously their goal is to keep people playing pickleball, which to be honest is my goal too. Wherever it may be, that's the goal. That's the Park and Rec Committee, that's what we do. We want people out playing. So their product, although it is brand new, so we don't have good pictures, we don't have a lot of testing. They do have a 90-day full money-back guarantee, so that we do have plenty of time to run some sound tests. They do have the highest claims for lowering decibel level. As Kim stated, it will be still, no matter what we get, it's gonna be on a 12-foot fence. It's probably not gonna help the 3rd floor or even the 2nd floor. I don't know. Is it gonna help in general, all the decibel readings? It will. But we won't be doing the test from her bedrooms either. So if it's not, I mean, like Mariana keeps saying, that whatever, it could end up money that's not so well spent.
You said they have a
but
90-day money-back guarantee?
Yeah.
Interesting.
What's being guaranteed here?
That they'll take the decibels down, not that the neighbors will be happy.
Do they have a benchmark?
I know where I was going, but
So
It's gonna bring it down to 55?
well, because it's so different in different spots, he says they can take it down by 17 decibels.
all right, from wherever it is to wherever it's going,
Right.
and wherever
Down by
whatever that
17.
17 number is, that's where they end up.
Right.
Okay, and we would know where we're starting.
Do they agree with the baseline of where we're starting? Or do they have to take their own measurements?
They would test before and after.
So what if their initial baseline measurement didn't match what we think the decibels are?
There's a million other things like that you
Well,
can
this is
say,
just about a
it's the weather.
contract,
it's
signing
the-
with a contract, you know,
Right.
it's, we think we know based on the USA pickleball tests and other tests, what the decibel level is. You know, I just,
I think they do it right on site here. They're not,
Yeah, oh, for sure.
they're not gonna,
There.
Are we, excuse
Isn't
me,
that what,
Madam Chair, are we looking at aesthetics as well? Is that being taken into consideration?
Sorry?
Aesthetics?
Aesthetics is one of the things on the list, so this new company, we haven't really seen exactly what they have. We've seen the top one, because it's in Beverly. And then the second one has done a lot of sound mitigation for, not as much for pickleball, but for construction sites and stuff, so you can see that in the pictures. But this one, we don't have good pictures of it. So aesthetically, we don't even know if they can get green. Right now, it's black with some clear.
Just to add to that about the aesthetics, it's full disclosure, as far as some of the meetings we've had where there's been residents and neighbors in there, there are people that, obviously some concerned about the cost, but then there's also people that you're gonna have a contingency that are gonna be concerned about the aesthetics looks of that. So it's kind of, you're solving, I mean, you may be solving one issue, but then you're gonna have, I'm making this up, 4 or 5 other people that are gonna be coming to you saying they don't like the look of this green or that color or whatever. So that is part of the process here to see. Aesthetics is part of that. Obviously, soundproofing is number one, right? But just to let you know.
wasn't there supposed to be a meeting in the
No.
fall?
Kim,
Sorry.
okay, now you may go, but you really do need to put your hand up.
I'm sorry. There was, when those panels went up, there was gonna be a meeting, neighborhood meeting about those panels with the neighbors. That never happened.
No, there really wasn't enough information from that, so that's kind of the information we've been gathering to try to do this
Right.
meeting
There was
tonight
no-
and
No,
Wednesday.
not back and forth between you.
Then that maybe should have been communicated to the neighbors because we've just been left in limbo and now it's March. There was not enough information to have a meeting with us.
Well, right, well, that's what this is and what Wednesday night's meeting is.
Okay. Carol, you too. Another possibility is, while we're waiting for sound mitigation, to restrict the use, not, one possibility is we don't open the courts until there's mitigation. Another is to restrict the use to town residents. Because as I understand, there's a lot of use of those courts by people who are not from town. And just by not having people from Hamilton or wherever using it, it's going to cut down on the hours that the neighbors have to put up with the noise.
I just think that that's somewhat draconian. I think that, I don't know how you monitor that.
Oh, that's
Okay.
easy.
Oh,
You put a lock on it and you put a fob.
Okay. Rather than restrict residents, I'd think about restricting hours to start off with. Okay. 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. It's that, I would be more in favor of restricting the hours than restricting, because then we're looking at setting a precedent for every other facility, playground in town.
so I like the idea of a keyed entrance with a fob. The reason is because it gives us flexibility to adapt after we learn. We could restrict to either residents or hours using that type of system, and if we find that, oops, we made a mistake, and that first approach wasn't the right approach, we could easily flex and do something different. So from that perspective, that sounds good as even a temporary measure, because no matter, if we pick one of these systems, it's gonna take months to get them installed. Is there anything we can do in the meantime? Now, that begs the question, how long would it take to get, you know, this keyed entrance, this fob-based entrance criteria added? Is that, you know, a 2-month process too? Because then my argument just goes right out the window.
Did you have Sarah Melish with her hand up?
Okay, I'm going to take Sarah Melish because she is a town official, and then I will get to them. Sarah?
Thank you. Sarah Melish, 11 Bennett Street, Chair of the Finance Committee. I'm not sure whether this project ever came before the Finance Committee or whether it was a CPC project. But it seems to me that it's now financially becoming out of control. And to the best of my knowledge, we have $0 in the current year's budget, which is pressing dollars to the limit to pay for any type of remediation. And you know, I question whether it's worth the town's money to have pickleball courts if we have to pay so much money for remediation. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Elizabeth Hill, 11 Norwood Avenue. Just on the point of restricting hours, as somebody who works full-time, it really disadvantages full-time employees from being able to pay after work, so.
Ms. Driscoll.
Muffin Driscoll, 33 Bridge Street, and also a member of Parks and Rec. Kathy, to the suggestion of keep the fob and the access and to Ann's point, how long will that take to put all of that into process? What would it cost? How would it be managed? I think we're more prudent to be heading in the direction of sound mitigation.
I'm not, we're not suggesting that
No,
these are alternatives.
I know. And to Brian's point, closing it to just residents only, I feel would set a major precedent for all our other open spaces and park spaces. Would Brook Street residents come in and ask for the Brook Street tennis courts to be resident only? I just, that would concern me greatly if that was a direction that we took. I don't think that's who Manchester is.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, so I'm in favor of Brian's suggestion about maybe shortening the hours a little bit, not on the back end, but on the front end. Maybe things start at the 8 o'clock, maybe they should start at 9. But I would be in favor of certainly having it go a little bit later on beyond work hours in the afternoon so that people have an opportunity. I don't know if people are playing at 8 and then going to work. I suppose they are today, but I'd be in favor of that. I'm not in favor of the fob sort of thing. I think that's going to be, that'll run up some bucks trying to put a system like that together. Second, I play a lot of racket sports. And let me tell you, I have partners all over the North Shore. And when you put that in there, you're saying, it's just one person, okay? The other people on the court can be from anywhere. And by the way, I don't play pickleball. I play all the other racket sports. But, you know, I don't think the fob is so practical because most groups, there'll be somebody in town. It's not going to shorten things a whole lot. So I think that the time area is something we can look at to try and shorten things, at least in the short term. From a money perspective, I feel uncomfortable spending any money unless the town knows we're spending money, starting with the Finance Committee. And I think Sarah's correct in voicing comments there. We're not talking about $500 or $1,000 here. We're talking about a lot of money. I don't know where the money has gone for this revolving fund, and what was the other fund that you said where there might be money that could be used?
We have a general maintenance account.
Yeah, but
Parks and
I don't know that that's the objective, to use this for what essentially is capital investment.
Or another question to ask is, if we did use that money for this, what are we not doing? Correct.
I mean, that money is coming from
That's the
somewhere, is that from user fees?
Would it be used for something else?
From the beach, people who go to the beach or something, I
Well,
don't
the
know.
revolving fund is some excess fees collected that more than covered the cost of the program. So,
Okay.
you know, over the years, that accumulates over time.
Some sort of a sound dampening system, I think, seems to be the way to go. I'm a little concerned about how we're gonna finance that.
Question, how do we determine which Parks and Recs programs collect fees and which ones don't? Because pickleball is free, other things are free, but we charge for other things. So I'm trying to understand what's the rationale we use to charge for some things versus others.
We don't staff pickleball, so that's really.
So it's
a lot
staff.
of what it's
So
about.
if we
The
staff
cost.
something, then we recover the cost of the staff through a user fee?
I mean, not just staff, whatever other costs there are to the program, but.
Well, so that's what I'm getting at, though. If soundproofing is a cost to the program, so should we charge a user fee for those who are using the court to pay for the soundproofing? Is that in alignment with how we do other Parks and Recs programs? I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
I see this more as an outdoor recreational space more than a program, but it does have more.
We'll start talking $40,000 every 10 years or so. I mean, that's why I'm asking.
Like the beach. I can't,
It's outdoors, but we charge for that.
We also staff it.
Right, well, people are spending time monitoring the hours or locking or unlocking the gate. They're doing something. They're not just, it's not unstaffed. It doesn't sound unstaffed. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but there's
We rely
some
mostly on
effort.
volunteers for that stuff.
Okay.
Just as long as, I understand what you're saying, but there's a cost to everything. Sweeney Park gets paved over, there's a cost. We don't charge for the basketball courts. Tennis courts get redone every once in a while. There's no charge there. So I understand the beach, but there's a lot of staffing going on, but most of these sporting, the baseball fields and the softball fields and back, or soccer, however you want to say that, there's use there, there's cost there that you have to pay every so often, or every year, or maintenance that we don't charge.
Also, Brook Street Playground, Brookfield Field, on Sunday mornings, there's a bunch of people playing soccer over there, all right? And I'm sure there's not that many soccer players in town. So they're coming from all over, and they're.
Totally
are they
get it.
paying- Are they paying for the use of the field?
That's why I asked for the rationale, because if I add up the hours that this board alone has spent discussing this issue, it's quite more than we discuss soccer, baseball, basketball, tennis, or any other sport that I can think of. So I think whatever we wind up doing, we should have clear rationale for charging or not charging, and it's still a little unclear to me what our rationale is.
Go ahead, please, Kim.
There was some, I think Lauren said something about raising funds for maybe the panels or whatever. And if it got moved, that there could be a fundraising campaign for that and take what is already there as far as the fencing and the nets, and you wouldn't, if you put it in the right place, you wouldn't even need the panels.
Thank you. I'm beginning to hear some consensus in the board. One is that we shouldn't take money, that this is something that should be put in front of the voters.
certainly in front of the Finance Committee.
And another, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the neighbors can just suffer until the Parks and Rec gets around to making a decision about how to spend whatever money the town decides to allocate in April.
I don't know about that. I think that even if we told Cheryl today, go buy X, there's going to be some suffering if we allow the courts to be opened. Was it April 1st? So to me, the question is there anything we can do to alleviate any suffering until something is done, whether it's after town meeting or before town meeting. I think if we're saying that courts can open, there's gonna be some period of discomfort.
Could we perhaps ask the town staff to find out what the cost would be for a lock and fob system and how quickly it could be installed, and charge town members, town residents for fobs? Is that something you could come up with?
Yeah, yes.
An alternative is just to say that those courts are public nuisance.
Well, I think my feeling is we have been spending time trying to learn what our options are. We have options in front of us to try and make it better, but unfortunately, it's not fast enough to get it done before the season opened. Personally, I would like to see us move forward with some soundproofing before we have any discussion of moving the courts. Because until we put soundproofing in, I don't really think we know how successful it will be. But my concern is, can we do something in the meantime to alleviate as much suffering as possible? Some quick turn. If it's not fobs maybe they'll work out. Is there anything else temporary that we can do?
I think you should proceed with the sound barrier, and I think you could truncate the hours until that is in place. I think those are two concrete steps forward.
But to go ahead, the sense I have is that we have a tight, that taking money from the Parks and Recs revolving fund means that something else won't happen.
We would work to regain some of that money through running programs at the pickleball courts. So through lessons or possibly a fundraiser tournament, to kind of replenish that revolving fund money.
And the fob system. That makes sense.
Because you would charge
Yeah.
a reasonable, $10, $15 for.
If we had people sign up for lessons or a tournament or something like that, then it would be paid, yes.
So if we have some money left over from I think it was the CPC.
There was CPC funding, the 28,000.
All right.
10 of that has been spent for the higher fence, so there remains, in round numbers, another 10 left. So if you went with this SLM CR product at 25,000, I don't know if they're sharpening the pencil anymore, but you would need 15,000 more. And I think the revolving fund could handle that without too much upset.
Excuse me, just a quick question on this, and that their pictures, is this a 12-foot cover?
I think that's just for their picture. It's
Yeah,
not-
I understand.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that is not 12-foot cover.
it's not, but the number they have provided to us
Prices, yeah.
is.
The price is for 12 foot.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Does that change anyone's mind about using the revolving fund to supply the?
So similar to the discussion we just had on the harbor launch, we wanted that to be self-sustaining, right? If what Cheryl is suggesting is that the soundproofing here could be self-sustaining based on program fees or whatever, and not involve tax dollars, I would be okay with saying, yeah, let's go buy it and try it. It's the additional tax dollars, to Brian's point, I have a problem with saying yes to without the town weighing in.
So from the revolving fund, not from,
So the 10,000 that was already approved by voters, I think is
Right,
fair
but that's,
game.
yes, that's fair game because it was already approved by the voters for this purpose, yes.
So that additional 15, again, in round numbers, that that would, I think it is fair to say that we can do that out of revolving, which is not tax-based.
My only, so that sounds good. I would be cautious about introducing additional noise on the pickleball courts in order to collect money to soundproof the pickleball course. So I like the thought, the specifics, give me
I mean,
the.
frankly, beginners that you're teaching are
Yeah.
a lot quieter than
Look, okay.
people out there who are really good at it and are having a really aggressive game.
Excellent.
There's a big difference in noise between skill levels, I would say.
And you could educate people on the quiet paddles and all of that as part of it.
Were there any programs, educational programs or teaching programs that went on this past summer?
We've done some learn to play pickleball programs, yeah, I think the first summer, and then minimal last year, more of community play, like free.
Okay, these were tuition types of things?
Yeah,
Okay, so you have a handle of them, those programs.
and then we kind of stopped it for a little while just to ease down.
Okay.
So are we generally okay with the idea that, I'm gonna blame that on Greg, suggested that we encourage the Parks and Recreation Committee to go ahead as quickly as possible with sound mitigation, and use the existing funds, rather than waiting for the town meeting to approve funds? Okay, I move that we,
What about hours of operation?
let's,
One at a time?
one at a time. That we encourage the Parks and Recreation Committee to go ahead as quickly as possible with sound mitigation, using the funds that are currently available from the CDC grant and 15, whatever is required from the revolving fund to expedite the purchase.
Second.
From the amendment, this discussion, we're looking at an additional 15,000 if we go with this one. What's gonna stop us from saying, okay, we have a 90-day window, we don't like it, we wanna go to the next one, which is $35,000. Okay? Then it
We have
becomes,
$25,000
Back
and.
to the drawing board.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that it's not, we're not opening the spigot and you can do what you want. It's up to and that's it, or
This particular solution that
to
they.
buy this particular and that's it. Okay, I will acquiesce to that, okay? But I just don't want this to become just a dam with a hole in it,
Okay.
I might propose a friendly amendment.
Sure.
The funds from the revolving parks fund to be refunded through various programs associated with the pickleball court.
I agree. Second.
Fine.
All right. John?
Fine.
Yes.
Anne says yes. Ken?
Yes.
And Brian?
Reluctantly, yes.
Okay. The next question is, in the interim, should we restrict the hours? Yes, please, sir.
Jeff Solons, Lincoln Avenue. Before you get into that, what Greg had said about the beginner level, advanced beginner level being a little bit quieter on the courts and the more advanced being louder, perhaps. If you had a program where the beginners would be playing from, say, 8 to 10, and then the more advanced players play after that, who would be quieter in the morning. I don't know if that's what you're driving at, or you just want to limit the hours anyhow. So it definitely is a difference in the noise.
Particularly
Noise for
since the beginners would have somebody from Parks and Rec there to try and?
Well, it's just
Or
the nature of the
volunteer.
beast, to be honest with you. That's the way it is.
I think to that
Not
point.
quite as
Susan,
aggressive. As far as the language goes, we've tried to take care of that last year, and I think we did a pretty good job from where we started with some of the language that was on the courts, and music also. And I'm looking at the Little League, the loudspeakers, the music between innings, the announcing of players, so forth, so on. So you've got that you're dealing with also. So the pickleball noise from players is not anything like that. Every once in a while, somebody gets a little excited. But again, if you wanted to, if it's a noise you're worried about early in the morning, you can have open play for beginner and advanced beginners. And then the more advanced players playing later in the day, perhaps. Just a thought.
Question.
Yes.
Yeah, if I may ask Cheryl. So Cheryl, in the programs that you ran last summer, were there instances, and any program you run takes precedence. I don't know how many courts you're using. Have you had to displace players that were out there because, hey, we're having, okay.
Yeah, and then, well, those programs, like you said, were the paid programs, and we did it actually the first summer, so, or the first fall, so not so much last summer. But then last summer, we did have our volunteer group who ran community play in the morning. And that was the beginner, more of the beginner people. So it's not necessarily something that people are paying for and we're hiring someone to be down there, but we have volunteers, volunteer group, we would be monitoring that.
Okay, so just as Jeff made the point there, by definition, if those programs are going,
Right.
the level of noise is going to be down.
Right.
A bit.
And this is more, you think money was coming in just because we were having beginners there.
Yeah.
But to that point, we can't guarantee there's going to be 7 days a week.
No.
That kind of play. So I think we still have to look at restricting hours.
Yeah.
I think if you set a precedent and say this is the way it's going to be from 8 to 10, beginners only, that will happen.
I don't think 8 o'clock.
It will happen. And if there's somebody monitoring that, it will happen.
Madam Chair, perhaps after the sound attenuation is in place. But until that happens, we have to look at restricting hours until those. Okay, that's my
Yes,
opinion.
I hear you, and, okay, so shall we pass that back to, how much would you like to restrict the hours?
Well, I think as a courtesy and to show good faith, at least 9 o'clock. I wouldn't start at 8 o'clock. At least 9 o'clock. And then a kind of update of maybe time, maybe 7 o'clock. So maybe we're talking, 9 to 7 until everything's in place. And then we can revisit the hours and go back to the posted hours we've had in the past. I think that's a good compromise.
Mhm. Yeah, and Cheryl, I assume the programs you're running are in the summer.
Right.
So I mean, April, May, chunk of June, it's not relevant for programs.
Exactly.
Relevant.
Yes, I'm going to take people who haven't spoken. Yes.
Caroline Derbyshire, I'm 17 Musconomo. I just want to tell you how enjoyable it's been for so many hundreds of people to enjoy this facility that you have provided for the town. And it would be a real, it would be really a bad situation if you started like trying to get people not to play as much. I also want to remind you that Summer Street is a state road. I'm sure you all know it and you don't need a reminder, but when we're there and the construction vehicles go by, the emergency vehicles go by, the ambulances go by, it's probably up to 200 decibels.
I don't think so, but.
It's very loud.
It's very loud.
Very loud.
It's very loud.
Madam
What-
Chair,
Yes,
I think we're conflating inconvenience with hardship. Okay? And I think that a compromise of limiting early morning hours and late hours until we have the sound attenuation in place, I think if everyone hurts a little bit, then I think we're all in a
So
good shape.
I'm not done yet. I
Okay.
wanted to add that if you want to restrict some hours, as we've heard from the neighbors, that it's loud 8 hours a day and, you know, impossible to live there, that you would restrict maybe in the middle of the day when it's really hot, maybe from 12 to 2 when it's very, very hot and people usually don't play as much, but, you know, that's another thought to consider.
To that point, they're not gonna play, so there is no noise, okay?
Well, we
And we've
hear that
discovered,
there is noise.
we've discovered, I think that Parks and Rec will speak to this, that the bulk of the play is morning and afternoon, early evening, and there's not a lot, the sound is not as major an issue midday. So I think we have to look at the shoulder hours to begin with, and then revisit this after everything's in place, my opinion.
thank you. The other comment that I have heard often is that there's something particularly unpleasant about the sound of pickleball. It's not traffic. Ambulances don't come by constantly. It's just the irregular clock that causes people not to want to be there unless they're playing. That's it. So, John, thoughts on restricting hours?
I'm good with the 9 to 7 time period. I think Brian first brought that up, that window until mitigation's in place.
Sure.
I just wanted to say is from the board and also as a resident, I understand what's going on. I'm a little, not a little, I am disappointed that we're talking about this now. Pickleball courts have been open for 1.5 years. There have been numerous, the people that are complaining have been well known since that time, that you're giving us little time to solve this solution or get this solution when this has been known. Also, it's been known that the board was looking at, or the committee was looking at sound mitigation to come in. It's akin of saying, you know, October 1st, let's talk about dogs on the beach, and then October 15th, we're gonna only let half the dogs on, or whatever the case may be. I understand, but I just think I also believe personally, I understand some hardship, but there are more people in the neighborhood that like that 2 or 3 people that, because they are vocal, can change this, that you're opening up a precedent for, I don't know, there's a number of people that don't like the fireworks. I don't know, we'll go down that path.
We have been waiting very patiently for 1.5 years for some progress. Now we have the 12-foot fence. I hear you, but I disagree. So,
You want a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. So motion with regard to the hours of operation, I make a motion that we set the hours from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. until sound mitigation is in place.
Second.
Is there, yes, Kim?
I'm sorry. The first set recommendation was 10 to 6. I think that's what you originally said, but I think someone changed it. I think that's a better time frame, 10 to 6. But just sit down every night to dinner just to hear that. So if it goes to 7, that's what I hear 7 days a week. But
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
we know.
we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion to move forward?
The only thing I would say is the operating hours are easily changed at another select board meeting if we find that we want to reconsider.
Brian,
Yes.
the motion is 9 to 7. Kathy?
Yes.
Ann says yes.
Yes.
Are there, do we think we have dealt with this as well as we can tonight?
Just one question. So Greg, you're following up on this FOB concept, correct?
Yes, we'll get some cost estimates.
Some
Okay.
time, okay, fine.
Yes.
Sorry, is this 9 to 7 until the sound mitigation
Right.
is
Yes.
completed, correct? And what if it doesn't get done?
We look at the problem again. Okay.
I just wanted to add one piece, that the hours have already been shortened. So this was already in consideration. It was until dusk, and it was earlier, and so they already did limit the time. So that's already, just so that you know, the background, it's already been compressed.
Thank you. I think we're done with this discussion. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry that most of you didn't get exactly, none of you got exactly what you wanted. But I appreciate all of the comments. Thank you.
Interactive.
Front page of the Globe this week.
And we're not alone. You read the paper.
Front page, yeah.
We're not the only
Across
town
the
going
country.
through this, yeah.
You want the guy that invented it, take his money and ran. He's sitting somewhere on a quiet beach.
Outside.
What's next?
It's in the catalog.
Hi, ex-friend. You have some.
What's next?
Ocean Street.
What's next is Ocean Street, which is going to be, also going to be fun.
Actually, the Ocean Street issue's been going on since 2007, so.
Right. I'm going to try and, we have a proposal right,
Tetra Tech is the name of the
Tetra
firm, yeah.
to do a study of the Ocean Street area. And it's like studies, they meet with people, they study the area, and the goal is to find a way to keep from having to replace Ocean Street that meets the desires of the neighbors as well. This is a $75,000 study. We're looking for a grant, I think.
Yeah, we've had some conversations with folks at CZM, Coastal Zone Management. They have encouraged us to pursue this proposal through the grant funding round. I think it just opened up. I'm not going to recall the deadline for submitting the proposal. It's in a few weeks. Probably would know late summer, and an award probably in the fall timeframe.
And we're also looking for a quote from Fuss
Fuss and O'Neill
Fuss and O'Neill.
would also be interested in this, yes. And so they've been looking at a potential scope of work as well.
The The proposal is in our packet, and our packet is online, so if you want to comment on, if you want to understand what that's, and this is the long-term problem. There are a couple of short-term problems. One of them is non-residents parking at White Beach.
Yes.
And Greg, I think you said that the police.
So police is, yeah, they're assuming that they are successful in the hiring, he's a little more encouraged. He's got a couple, 3 candidates. So that would be part of their routine, would be to drive.
It would not be somebody there all day, but somebody who would come by from time to time and leave a trail of $50 parking tickets, which should be discouraging to people who think that they've got a free beach. And Parks and Rec, bless them, not everything in town has to be free to everybody. The other situation is that is an absolutely lovely street for walking. It's one of the, probably the nicest walking area. And we've currently got a section of sidewalk that's impassable. And I think.
Yeah, DPW's just been waiting for the winter storm season to come to an end, and then they will do some patching. It's almost April, so it's very close to time to do that.
They will make that passable by.
Yeah, it'll be a compacted.
But something that
gravel material.
you could drive a stroller across.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think this is actually I assume that the DPW ordinarily fills potholes.
Right. So they'll be doing the same on the roadway, patching.
Yes.
Brenda Furlong, 19 Ocean Street. Are there any permits required? Because I continue to hear from Chuck Dam that one of the issues here is a very lengthy process to get regulatory permits to do these kinds of works. Can we do the sidewalk without those kinds of permits?
Simply patching, repairing what's there, we can do. Concom will probably have to sign off, but that's in the scheme of things, that's not as onerous as others.
Well, it's a very dangerous area right there when you go east of Crow Island because the road bends, and it's just at the juncture where you have pedestrians with strollers and dogs and toddlers jumping off the sidewalk into the street. And there's a lot of concern that somebody will be hit.
This, I asked that this be put on because we had it on our activities, on our
Action item
agendas
list, yeah.
for today. And this is just a progress report. And yes, please.
Yes, hi, Mary Ann Coon, 5 Ocean Street. So in January, I had said that I'd come to this meeting. It seems to me Ocean Street is it's going to be a long process. And I'm just wondering if any kind of advisory board would be put together or advisory committee to help the town, go through this process. And I would very much like to be part of that advisory committee, or not offer my services to be part of that advisory committee. Because I think it's something that it's not just the residents of Ocean Street that use that. Everyone, I went to high school here and probably had my first drink down there. No. No, my first joint. No, but anyway.
It's a memorable place.
It's memorable.
Oh, I'm being recorded, sorry, How's the 75? No, anyway, all I'm just saying is, I think it's gonna be a touchy subject the further we get down. And it is gonna be a long process, and I think advisory committee should be something that maybe should be developed, and I would offer my services.
If you did that as an advisory committee to Chuck.
Yes.
So that it's, not something, but yes, that's a good idea.
So Chuck could set that up
Yes.
himself and just, you could post for volunteers to join that committee, and that way would not involve open meeting laws and a lot of bureaucracy, and you could just advise Chuck.
Just have a quick question. So Chuck is soliciting proposals for feasibility, I guess it is, from a couple of engineering firms. Is that correct, Greg?
Right.
Okay. And they're aware of all of the regulatory hurdles, shall I say?
They are.
Don't make recommendations that are, this will not happen in a million years.
Well, they'll probably evaluate different options and comment about the feasibility, including the permittability
Well,
of the
I'm
project.
primarily interested in all of that, what.
Right. So the idea is to look at a wide range of options and to evaluate the viability of each of those options.
Okay, I hope they focus on the ones that are realistic or.
Yes, please.
Becky Vaughn, 7 Victoria Road, adjacent Ocean Street. Just curious as to how we can get information on this, because I hadn't heard any of this was even happening until I saw a discussion on Ocean Street and started asking questions. So is there a way I can, and other people in the area, especially neighbors, find out what is happening with the research and information gathering?
So certainly if we get a grant or funding of one sort or another and we get a study underway, then there'll be regular reportings, an advisory committee would be formed.
That would be part of the advisory,
People-
but is,
That would be important.
that would be part of our job is to.
Yeah, you could do some
inform-
outreach yourselves
Right,
amongst
exactly, that's
neighbors.
exactly would be my role, is to
Yeah.
make sure everyone knew what was going on.
I
So,
know,
yes.
yeah, I know that the DPW on their page on the website has a list of projects. I don't know if this
Right,
one is
so
on it.
it's not there now, but we would create a page.
Okay, so,
certainly.
and, the top 10, at least the top, and this is in the top 10 for sure, would be, put a little paragraph and update it as something new comes up.
Sarah Melish has her hand up.
Sarah Melish, please.
Yes, I'm hoping that the town has a master plan regarding which streets and sidewalks they consider, rather than going primarily on abutters' complaints. I live on Bennett Street, sidewalk is impassable, the street is almost impassable. And I think there are a lot of areas in town in that same situation, and you should not be just considering areas where residents are complaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren Coons, 5 Ocean Street. So Greg, you're applying for a grant for 75,000, is that correct?
Thereabouts, I mean,
Is that-
don't lock in on that number quite
Is
yet,
it
but
town meeting, town vote?
no.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, we're trying to pursue outside funding. If we were not successful, then we have to revisit this discussion.
That's what I'm getting at. If it's not accepted or whatever, you can't get the funds. It's just status quo for Ocean Street the way it is now. DPW comes in and does their thing every once in a while.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess Mary Ann Coombs, 5 Ocean Street, I guess that our biggest, one of my concerns is, here again, making sure everyone is informed. And I just don't want to all of a sudden wake up one day and say, oh, we're not going to fix the road, and guess what? You can't drive the full one end to the other end of Ocean Street. That's what I just want to avoid, that happening, coming to that point without everyone knowing, everyone making it an educated decision and acceptance of whatever.
Chuck has his hand up. actually.
Are you ready for me, Ann? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to, kind of give a little bit of additional information or background or whatever, but, we annually do maintenance in the spring on Ocean Street, and I don't suspect this year or any year in the future will be different. Kind of getting to one of Brenda's points about timing and permitting and all that, there is a much bigger difference between what we can do in terms of maintenance versus what we can do to remedy the situation. And I think what we're looking for in these grants, in any town funds even, let alone grants, going towards Ocean Street in this capacity is to find out what the final long-term solution is. Because it certainly is on my mind every storm and every year, how much that maintenance will be and where it comes out of our budget. To Sarah's point, we do have a list and we, generally make it to all the streets where we do pipe work and other infrastructure improvements. Ocean Street is one that we actually did the water main a few years ago, and we did do a repaving project. However, we stopped at White Beach and Black Beach because of this situation where the road becomes inundated every year. And there is nothing that I can do as DPW director or the town can do throwing money at this situation that we will be able to accomplish, all of our stated goals without doing this kind of preliminary analysis where we will do the feasibility, but also look very long-term. And also, there is an element here of permitting. And I just want to be very honest with people on the call and in the room. It is very unlikely that we will get a 100% hardscape solution. The last project, and I think you said the last topic on the agenda today that nobody in the room was happy. I think this is very likely going to be a scenario where nobody is happy, but that is the best solution to a bunch of bad solutions. So I just want to make everybody aware that that's what we're up against and that's what we're going to be working towards. And it will be a long process. In the meantime, we will do everything we can to make the road passable from one way to the other with no injuries and as safe and accommodating as possible. But it is very tall water and it gets taller every day. So if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to go into detail or talk about something else. But I just want to make that clear.
Oh, that sounds so good. Thank you, Chuck. Okay.
Yeah, here again, that's what I just said.
We will make every effort to keep people informed. It's just, it's a more heavily used pedestrian area than many others in town. And I'm sorry if I have interfered with somebody's long-term plans of the town. Which street should be handled first?
To that end, just put that action item, just move it down another 3 months and.
I was gonna ask, when
Go ahead and.
when can we expect to get another update? Can we change the date?
So we can certainly share the final grant proposal as a sort of next milestone. We can post that on the website as well, so people can take a look at it. So but beyond that, it's sort of a wait situation until we hear from the grant award. So that's probably going to be end of summer.
So I guess though, as far as when that might be posted, you mentioned spring, I think, like later this spring. Can we put a June date?
It'll be in I want to say 6 weeks or so. It's in that time frame.
Okay.
That will be
So could we
submitting the
just
grant.
change the date to even get a quick update on the town administrator's report out a couple months out? I guess my other question would be if we learn later in the fall that we didn't get the grant, would an option be to go before town meeting in the fall to request money for that analysis?
That is an option, yes.
Okay. So I know we're probably going to be talking zoning in the fall town meeting, but I'm trying to work back a schedule and put a date to follow up so we don't miss a window of opportunity to talk about this again. So if we wanted to when are we going to start working on the warrant for the fall town meeting, I guess, September or?
Yeah, that'll be September.
Okay,
23rd.
all right.
Yep.
Sure.
Pass this one first.
Gotta plan ahead, otherwise
Yeah.
things fall through the cracks.
Chuck's got his hand up.
Chuck?
Thanks. Just one last thing, anybody in the room, once they review the scope, or online, I guess. And if they have any comments or if they think we're missing the point or missing something, I'm happy to take those comments directly and see if we can make some changes before we submit it to the grant. I will just say, keep in mind, the grant will be looking for, solutions that are endorsed by the abutter, but, also the community at large. So to the extent that you have friends that aren't on Ocean Street or just, other interested parties around town or community members or organizations, they would be welcome participants as well.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you very
Thank you
much.
for coming. Thank you for your comments.
That's not like.
That's a sign we don't have any more controversial topics.
Oh,
That'd be warm now, one way or the other.
Okay. The next thing is liaison updates.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Only thing I have is, I guess, Council on Aging Seniors. Greg and I went to the Golden Agers luncheon last Saturday. And there's some minor fireworks, nothing that Greg hasn't seen before in his...
Robust discussion, I think is the word you
In his
want.
40 years of
I had an
experience.
opportunity to discuss with, when I talked to the ringleader there, who I forget her name now,
No, there's several ringleaders. They tag team you.
Saturday night at the
Oh.
Legion St. Patrick's Day. Todd framed with, a big solid swing in front of her.
Okay. And anyway, they're involved. And we did have an opportunity to show them a preliminary layout of what things might look like. They had opinions about that. Nothing, I think, that was dramatically different from what was presented, but things would be altered a little bit. So they're engaged, they're interested, and they're also generally, they are happy that things are moving along. I would say it was a good venue to get everything really out in the open.
Parks and Rec. I'm done.
Let's see, there was a downtown improvement committee meeting this morning. We spent most of the meeting actually getting an update from Chris Only on the MBTA zoning task force progress. We also discussed, I didn't take notes because I thought Becky was going to give an update on the wayfinding project. So they showed a timeline of what that looked like, how they're going to, I guess the next meeting is meeting with the consultant who's going to show options on possible wayfinding. Then we got on a discussion on, well, what happened with the public, there's also a placemaking sub-project. What happened with the discussion on public bathrooms? So I spoke to Greg about that today, and I think we, as a town, got a little distracted when we thought we could use the community center. So I'm just here to remind us that since that is not on the table right now, we still have a community that is looking for a public bathroom solution. So I just think we need to come up with something. They feel like that part of the project kind of just went into a black hole, and I just think we need a little follow-up. So if we could just take an action to
Talk about harbor master office and public bathrooms.
we got to revisit, bring that full circle again. We need to do that. Last thing I will mention is, let me think. I think that was it. That was it. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, go back. Last time we met, we talked about, we had voted to close down certain committees and change others to advisory. And we also implemented that new policy on the reappointments. I haven't heard that communication went out to anybody, so I'm just wondering, I think we need to communicate to the board chairs at least on the new policy about the reappointments. Not sure when that's gonna happen, but I hope it's not something that happens late in June as we're about to revisit
Right.
appointments. So I think that needs to be done sooner rather than later, if we could just get an update on that.
Notify the department head, the committee heads, and those people who need to reapply.
Right. Yeah, but I think just all committees need to know that there is a new policy, so they're not caught by surprise,
Mhm.
even if they don't have somebody in that situation right now.
Yeah.
I think sooner rather than later. And then, Greg, I think you were planning to speak to or have some communication around the committee changes. I'm not sure when you plan to have that happen, but again, I think
Yeah, that needs to happen soon.
we didn't discuss timing around that, so I didn't know if the plan was to, let some of those committees know that there's a change and have it take effect and, as of the next fiscal year. We really didn't discuss timing. It can happen.
That was my assumption, that
Yeah,
we would let
okay.
it play out the rest of this year and then come
Okay.
July.
All right, so I think that's all.
But nonetheless, it's time to get that
Okay.
out.
That was it. Thank you.
The school committee, seems to have, agreement that from Essex, that their budget, even though it's a 4.8% increase, is something that Essex can follow. They are starting a feasibility study, for the Essex Elementary School. This is a long process, and it involves hiring some people and then doing some studies of whether to renovate in place, replace in the same location, replace in another location. And the cost of a feasibility study is on the order of 1.5 million, which came in at a very late point in our budget processes, which is causing some hiccups. The way that's divided, the fees, charge is divided in three, with the school picking up a third, and Essex picking up a third of the remaining 2/3, and Manchester getting the rest. It's an interesting process. It involves picking a building committee, at which point the building committee is more or less in charge. And anyone who's interested in being on a building committee, it's a very time-consuming effort, but it's very rewarding. At least, I've never been on one. I watched the high school one in great detail, and they get to form what the new school is going to be like. It's a very interesting process. The MBTA zoning, we had a list of principles, and in applying them, we came to the conclusion that the damage to the town, both in terms of increased population and general change, is much greater in large lots than it is in small lots. And that has led to concentrate on areas, I'm sure I've talked about this before, running from Powder House Lane across behind Powder House Hill, missing Central Street, going out Pine Street all the way to Newport Park. And then looking at another section going from approximately the Richdale gas station, including the buildings behind Laughing Gull, and the lovely 1963 building there, and picking up Valentine's movers. None of these flood. That gives us about 30 acres inside the half-mile circle. I'm sure there'll be lots of people who have lots of problems with that. But, if you replace a one-family with a three-family, you're adding two families. If you replace a one-family on a 1 acre, you're adding 14 families.
Excuse me. Cheryl got locked out.
Oh.
I'll be right back.
That's led us to look at, the storage areas, on Beaver Dam Road as the only part else in the LCD, and, that may in fact be quite dense. That's almost 7 acres, and, we're still looking. That's pretty much everything I'm doing. I guess we can go on to the annual town meeting articles.
So if you like, I can just sort of quickly run through. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So Articles 1, 2, 3, standard language. Article 4 is the town operating budget. Shows up very tersely here in terms of the language. Obviously, the finance book will detail that out for everyone. Article 5 is the capital budget. I listed in here the bond, but those would be pulled out as a separate article, so we would do that outside of Article 5. And we can reduce the bonds a bit because of the recent award we received through Congressman Moulton's office for help with the PFAS studies. So that can help reduce that, and also we're able to reduce it a bit by going with an in-house clerk of the works. Since we have so many capital projects over the next 5 years or so, it would be cost effective to bring that in-house rather than always contracting that out.
You're gonna hire somebody who'll be a master clerk of the works?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, exactly. So you'll see that obviously boost the DPW budget to do that, but it is a cost savings in the long run.
Like on Article 5, number 2, the DPW facility design one, I thought we were just testing School Street location for viability of
That's geotech work.
geotech work, right?
I
But
can
this
change
said-
that heading.
Yeah, because I looked a little odd.
Yep. No, that's a good suggestion.
13 and 14, that's equipment replacement fund per the schedule that we have looked at from time to time.
Yes, it does show the full funding for the new ambulance, that second ambulance. Nothing going into the replacement fund itself. The request was for that.
Yeah.
One of the items that we cut, since we're fully funding that second ambulance.
So that's a bigger kick this year.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I would like to see that schedule again then with that updated assumption at some point.
Yes, no, we have that, so yes, I'll get that to you. So then Article 6 talks about the launch service, so there'd be 3 elements to this vote. There'd be basically $9,500 to fund the operating expenses for May and June for this fiscal year, so it's a supplement to the current fiscal year budget. There would be the capital request to purchase the boats, which would be in this article, and then there would also be the operating budget, a little over $40,000 for FY25.
So this wording makes it look like the launch service would be operated using taxation. Is there any way to let people know that, you know, we would be reimbursed, it'd be
Yes. Yeah, we-
reimbursed by user fee, something to the language
Yep.
here added to make that a little clearer.
Yeah, supported by user fees.
It's 9,500 for fiscal year '24, and was it 4,000?
40,000.
Okay. My printer did not pick that up. So.
Oh, it wouldn't be quite, it wouldn't be, well, yes, it does, because it has to be the full year.
Yeah.
Even though it straddles the fiscal years.
It does.
And then Article 7 would be the bond language, about 7, playing with the numbers a little bit, trying to bring it down some, about 7.3 million for bonding rather than the 9.25. Meeting with Sarah and Peter Twining from the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee will be meeting again on Thursday, doing some fine tuning of that amount that we can pay from taxation and use of the fund balance or free cash. So that number we hope to bring in just over 7 million as a new bond. It's most likely we won't experience the needing the debt service on that until a couple of years from now. So we would, depending on how much gets done in the next couple of years, perhaps do a bond anticipation note, but then you start paying a year after you receive the money. So with any luck, we will be seeing the new tax revenues from CST to help offset the new bond payments. And then Article 8 is the purchase of the Mason building, a portion of that building, and seeking voter authorization, then for you to finalize those negotiations and authorize the dollars. So in talking with Sarah and Peter, we're thinking that half of this would come from fund balance and the other half from taxation. So about 500,000 from each source. And Article 9 is a sort of a truing up. We have received relatively modest amount of opioid settlement funds as part of the whole national settlement. And the funds came in and the state hadn't given us permission to set up special accounts for it yet. So it flowed back into the free cash account. So we want voters to approve setting up the special account now that we have authorization to do so from the state, and then transfer the money back from free cash into the special account.
You get to explain that one.
And then and then the monies are used to working with police and the health department on some special programming, making sure there's Narcan available in public spaces and that sort of thing. Article 10 is the school budget, general operating budget for the school, operating and capital. And Article 11 would be for the feasibility study. The thinking is that feasibility study, again, we can use in part some revenues, some taxation revenues or local receipt revenues, and then the other portion would be for capital exclusion. So it's a one-time bump to the tax rate, be about a 1% bump to the tax rate to fund this, the portion that isn't coming from other sources.
And so this money is to be used for what?
This is for the feasibility study for the Essex Elementary.
Okay, all right.
So it starts that.
The 600,000.
Right, so 660 is our share of that 1.5 million. And
That will be spent over for
Couple of years.
2.5 years probably.
Yes.
But the state wants us to put it all up front.
Right.
Because they want to show.
They want the commitment, right?
Yeah, yeah. I kept trying to think of a way we could stretch it out. We could borrow the money to stretch it out, but then that's,
yeah.
it's incurring more costs. It didn't seem worth it. And then 12 is the final piece for the turf fields, our final share. Originally, we were bonding this through the school. Essex didn't want to do that, and so we went ahead and paid basically 2/3 of our amounts, but we held off on this final share until the project was finished. And so it actually is lower than we anticipated. It's roughly $250,000 more that we owe towards the replacement of the turf fields. So that's what item 12 is for. And then 13 is the CPC projects. 14 is for authorization to acquire a new access easement through the housing authority's property, basically using the existing driveway. So we currently have an easement that runs along the southern border of the property, but some of the units that were built infringe on that easement. And so in talking to the Housing Authority Board, they've agreed that we can move forward with acquiring an easement using the driveway and then building a couple or 3 parking spaces right at the entrance to the trail up to Powder House Hill. And that there's also some funding for that in the CPC projects. You'll see that in the CPC list. Article 15 is the standard allocation to our OPEB obligation, our other post-employment benefits, primarily basically health insurance for retirees. And we continue to put money into that fund. Eventually, we won't have to be doing that once that fund grows large enough. We have another half a dozen years to go on that.
The tax, the stock market doesn't.
Assuming we don't get clobbered in the crash. And then we have a number of bylaw changes proposed. Article 16 talks about taking out the actual fines in the bylaw, since that tracks the state statutes and regulations, which often change. So it's just removing it from our bylaws and relying on other regulations to set those fees. 17 is the standard revolving fund approval for the Parks and Rec Department. In 18, some minor fine-tuning of our current stormwater management bylaw. We followed the state template in putting that together. EPA has told the state we wanted to make some changes to your template, so now we need to make some changes. Fairly minor changes. In 19, the new driveway bylaw, curb cut bylaw that we adopted did not include the option of having 2 curb cuts to a property. And so the planning board would like to put that back in. It would be subject to a special permit review, which is how it was in the past. It got lost in the push to put the bylaw in as a general bylaw instead of in the zoning. And then in 20 is a citizen petition for the for off-premise signs on town and school property. So these are for the banners at the play fields. And then 21 is the standard, if we have approved more than we anticipated, to take some additional funds out of the fund balance. So that's how it's shaping up. Obviously, this is still in pretty rough form. We need to make it more legal sounding and add some additional language, but it gives you the basis of what is being proposed. Obviously, if you have desires for something else, the time now is to speak. We need to finalize this at your next meeting.
In the consent agenda,
I'm sorry, you can also think about the order,
yeah,
obviously, if you have a suggestion for the order.
yeah, I guess I have
We had the
often seen.
senior center.
Yeah, that I remember asking, or
Often
mentioning
seen
that.
the school immediately following the town operating in capital and the school operating in capital and then go into the special.
But that's been our traditional pattern. I did put the launch and the bonding before the school, but just because I was following the capital budget.
Mm.
Your choice. You can think about that.
Just make sure the conversation on the senior center is up front as much
Yes.
as possible, I think.
They've been vocal on that.
Yeah.
Well,
It's Article 8.
I'd still like to think, I have a feeling we may lose part of our audience after that. So I'm not going to keep them.
You want to hold the seniors hostage.
I want to hold the seniors hostage to getting at least the school.
Oh, yeah, the school, yeah. I agree. But I would do the seniors right after the school.
Yeah, then the launch and.
Yeah.
That's probably still the giving mood.
Yeah, the launch, the launch, yeah, come after that. That's correct.
In the consent agenda, I have two relatively, well, one relatively small change in February 20th in the voter check-in, optional use of driver licenses, in the second to last line. In fact, the primary had more people than ordinarily show up for a town meeting. It's the duration of the check-in.
That's true.
And the other one is in the March 4th. On page 3, parking discussion. I thought that the stickers were good until the date printed on them, rather than for a year. Right. So if we want to change the date when the stickers expire, we can do it.
I agree with that.
Oh, I see, right. Yeah.
I also have a concern on page 5, where, item 9C, where it talks about the resident parking streets. So there, the very last line of that paragraph where it talks about noted exceptions, that Pine Street will be resident parking both sides from Central to Pleasant, and School Street resident only from Central to Route 128. There are no parking zones on the lower part of those streets, so it's not, like on Pine Street, I guess the west side or southern side, whatever you call it, where the gas station is, there's no parking on that side of the street up to
For that
Bryce.
certain stretch.
Right, it was that 1600.
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
so this gives the impression that for both Pine and School, you can do resident parking all the way up, and that's not true.
Gotcha.
So those lines need to be adjusted to account for the no parking zones.
Yep.
Other than that, with those corrections, can we approve the minutes?
I move the select board approve the consent agenda as modified.
Second.
Yeah. Okay,
And I seconded.
are we ready to vote? I am.
We are.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John, yes.
Excellent. Town administrators report.
So the Deadline for filing for elections is coming up 2 weeks away, April 1st. So if there's still interest out there, there's still time to submit papers with the deadline in 2 weeks' time. And then we'll have elections in the third Tuesday in May. So I mentioned briefly earlier, we have received a congressional designated spending, better known as earmarks. So we were a beneficiary of that. I made an error with Congressman in terms of his attendance. He's coming next Monday instead of today. And so we will receive him next week at Tulip at the water plant. And thank him for his efforts in getting us that $950,000 so we can advance our PFAS mitigation design work and testing and give him a tour of the plant. So that'll be next Monday. And then lastly, some work organized around some climate efforts. Two different sessions are coming up. One will be April 2nd, where we will give an introduction to some of the work that Harvard has been doing for Cape Ann and looking at the impact of a Category 3 hurricane on the area and some discussions on some efforts to try to mitigate some of that effort and sort of setting the stage for a specific project. And as part of our village vulnerability plan, there was the suggestion to look at Masconoma Park and how that perhaps gets reconfigured to better accommodate flooding and still be usable as a public space and public park. So after the beginning of April, when we have this first session, which will be on Zoom, and then the second follow-up to that will be at the end of April, April 30th, where we will have an in-person meeting to talk about specifically Masco and a design charrette for that park. And that'll happen over those 3 days, the 30th, the 1st, and the 2nd. And there'll be a couple of opportunities for the public to engage with the designers and give some feedback on what they think might make sense for the future of that area. So I think that'll be very interesting, and hopefully we'll get some folks to come out, and we'll certainly be publicizing that as the time gets closer. And I see that Sarah has her hand up.
Yes. Sarah.
So my issue goes back to parking, sorry.
Yep.
That when I look at the street alignment, it's my understanding that on Bennett Street, there's parking on the south side from Pine to Forester. But beyond Forester, there is parking on both sides, and that's not reflected in the parking streets guide. Sorry.
No, we can revisit that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I had for my report. I was finished.
In that case, we have an executive session, and I believe that I move that we enter into executive session for MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. We will also have included in that executive session will be executive session for MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body and not to return to open session.
Second.
All in favor? John?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
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 Fine. Thank you very much, Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
I like that.
Can I have you guys sign this?